It's basically it's on the issue at the moment because of the amount of bills that are being proposed to restrict funding to educational institutions that have trans individuals play sports with people who identify and play with people who as they identify with that gender. So that is why we're talking about the transport debate. It's not something that I chose as a topic lately, and I know it's an emotional topic for a lot of people, so I just asked everybody to please try to be kinder and understanding with this topic, and I'm going to throw it over to Hutch to start it off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have too much to say in the intro. I think on this topic, I'll probably do more listening than talking, but on the topic of Tulsi Gabbard, I think it's pretty telling that as soon as what were sort of the last things that she did when she was in Congress? She voted present on an impeachment vote for Donald Trump, and she proposed legislation to punish schools that incorporate trans athletes or something like that. I'm not quite sure what it was, but she clearly knows her audience, the Dave Rubins, the Joe Rogans, the Tim Pools, and you could foresee that coming literally like a year and a half ago. On the topic at hand, I'm very open-minded about trans members participating in athletics, and I think so much of the discourse has just become so toxic that it's very tricky to have this conversation. So I'm going to be very careful and pass the mic to somebody else right now.
Okay, now we're going to throw it over to DemonMama.
Yeah. Interestingly, this topic has been researched pretty extensively, and the consensus is that there really shouldn't be any controversy over this. Most of what is fixated on in this conversation is, unfortunately, base fear mongering that is thrown out, usually anecdotal evidence of someone saying a trans person did this or a trans person did that, which is usually, upon further investigation, not true at all. As it turns out, most sports organizations in the world have already had working standards in place for trans people to perform as their chosen gender. And there's not been any major issues with it. This issue seems to keep coming up as a sort of boogeyman issue for a lot of conservatives specifically, who don't really seem to actually have much care for the sports themselves, nor much consistency on the arguments that they're making. Instead, they use it as a cudgel by which to propagate fear and hate towards trans people. And as a result, I'm very disappointed to see that politicians like Tulsi Gabbard, although I will say I expected this sort of thing, to be jumping on that train, especially because there is no substantive evidence that there is any need for panic or even concern. The Olympics have for well over a decade allowed trans people to compete as their chosen gender, and that has been perfectly fine. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Now we're going to throw it over to No Comment Check. We cannot hear you. One moment. Let me fix that. There we go.
That's the problem.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes.
Okay, so something changed. Cool. I'm glad that we got that worked out. So as far as the big scary trans ladies coming along to dominate the sports and take away all the awards from the real women that are supposed to win the awards, I hate to break it to you, but we're already here. We've been here, and guess what? We suck. Trans girls. We suck. We haven't won anything. We haven't won medals. We haven't dominated any fields. You know, they'll focus in on like one or two athletes of people who transitioned when they were older and still, retain some muscle mass so that it's like shocking to the public. They'll do that sort of thing. They'll try to give you anecdotes and stuff like that. But like DemonMama said, there's no actual research. The research isn't conclusive, but the research that we do have doesn't suggest any sort of advantage in sports. In fact, you can even think of some sports in which the quote unquote advantages that get retained are actually disadvantages, right? Like the increased bone mass, and not such a good thing if you're like a long distance runner, right? And you have to carry more weight because of that. So, we think in a way about this issue, the conventional wisdom is not our friend. The conventional wisdom kind of leads us into like really bad takes. And this is something that the experts, like DemonMama said, have already weighed in on. And, from what the evidence, the preponderance of the evidence that we have right now, there's no reason to exclude this class of people from sports. And it has real impact. I'm going to put myself on the line here. I would have been able to potentially compete pretty effectively at kickboxing had it not been for the fact that I know that entering into that either on an amateur or a professional level competitively would make me a target. Because of that, I'm only able to teach essentially, and I mean that's fun and I enjoy it, but it's taken something away from me. So let's not get over invested in these abstract notions and these cerebral ideas of like, well, conceivably somebody could be affected. No, people are affected and our qualities of life are diminished because of it. Okay, and that's because of the hate, not because of the law, the experts. Everything is on the side that I should be able to compete. But in terms of the social experience, there's been studies that trans women who participate in sports get treated really badly.
Okay,
and
we're gonna move on to the next person. We just want to make sure everybody has time to do the intro. Next is gonna be Trihex before we move over to the right.
Hey, so you want my take on this topic, right? On trans
Yeah,
athletes?
I mean you can skip if you want to.
I don't know. I no. Let's hop into it here. So to not make it like too long-winded here. So there seems to be a fixation on the fringe examples of certain trans athletes, typically the male to female entering a female specified spectrum of competition and being able to like dominate. This is like not really like something that's been done in excess, but these fringe examples are the ones that are usually cited as like the unfair advantage and hurting the integrity of the sport. And the problem with this argument for me is that it's already bound in like arbitrary bullshit in the first place. Sorry, I'm not allowed to curse on the flame or not here.
Fine.
We can bring up a particular example here. Caster Semenya, am I saying their name right? It was a female athlete who was denied the ability to further compete. And I believe the 2016 Olympics or was it 2018 Olympics? I don't remember which one exactly here, but said female, biological female, produces a outside the expected spectrum of testosterone, and after passing a suspected what's the word here, drug test or something like that, ultimately was like, okay, well we can't prove that you have anything here, but they still ultimately declined her the ability to compete because she just had an abnormally high amount of test, which ultimately gave her an advantage to be able to produce more muscle and be able to just kind of like destroy her competition essentially. So ultimately, it's never really been about the biological spectrum of one's being, but instead, it's more like the societal norms and confining into like I hate to say it here, like the cis assignments of like what is considered totally normal, and the idea that the any kind of like transgenderism is influencing that is already like to me on the back burner of the integrity of the sport. So the whole thing goes back here to the argument being that we don't want to do it because it'll hurt the integrity of the sport. So people who argue for that purpose, to me, I would throw them this citation instead here, that it was never really a normal, it was just only an accepted tolerance in the first place here.
Okay.
So
we're gonna go over to the right now, and we'll have everybody do intros, and then we'll have open dialogue. Again, we're trying to get somebody to replace Phil. Hopefully, we'll be able to get that soon. We're gonna start with Kay Fellows.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I know that I'm supposed to be representing the right here, but this is something that I very often disagree with a lot of my right-wing peers on. I don't see this as being this big, humongous issue that they're making it out to be. I don't think that this is an overwhelming problem, and I don't think that it's a problem to the extent where we need to be passing legislation in Congress, in the federal government to prevent something that isn't even happening yet, setting preventative measures for an issue that we're not even really seeing is an issue right now. I think that the argument that because a transgender individual wins a medal or a trophy or anything is specifically because they're trans and they have some sort of unfair advantage. I feel like that's a really, really terrible argument, and I think that whenever people make that argument, it really goes to show a disconnect and a misunderstanding between many right-wing individuals and understanding transgenderism and this topic. I think that the right really does have a long way to go in understanding the topic of transgenderism as a whole, not just in sports. And I think that I know that somebody else has said this, but I think they've made this into some sort of like boogeyman conspiracy issue that we're just not seeing any evidence as it being a serious issue at this point. So I really don't understand why we're having not just it be considered such a serious issue, but to the point where we're actually having Congress people presenting legislation to prevent it from happening whenever it's not really happening. It's kind of mind blowing to me. There's so many other issues so many other legislations that we need to see passed, and this is what is being focused on. My issue with this whole thing is that we're having so much time taken up and having this conversation that doesn't even need to be had and getting this legislation passed that doesn't need to be passed. Like there's so many other things that Congress needs to be doing besides attacking transgender athletes.
Okay, next is going to be counterpoints.
Yeah, so DemonMama basically brought up the standards that are used by athletic organizations in order to, basically help trans folks compete on a, obviously like sports is supposed to be relatively meritocratic on a relatively fair, even keel. I wouldn't mind having a conversation about what those standards are. So for instance, I've heard it talked about by Riley Grace Rochon, I will shout her out, that basically like what it comes down to on a competitive level is endocrinological, like basically the testosterone levels in your body. So that's actually the real thing that kind of determines like this disparity in athletic performance. So what I would like is I would like an inversion of the rhetoric of the right wing for the past like 5 years, 2016 to 2020, where facts shouldn't care about our feelings. We might feel that because we saw a trans athlete blow through, a track competition, or we might feel because there was a combat sports trans woman who, dominated that fight or whatever. We might feel that this is an unfair advantage, but we should follow the facts. And if the facts say that after 2 years of, basically hormone treatment, the endocrinological levels drop back down to that to a comparative cis level, and on top of that, we're trying to hit a moving target while we're riding a fucking bullet train. The studies that need to be done in order to figure out exactly what needs to be done in sports, it's being done right now, and we're probably not really going to have a hyper codified what do we do about trans athletes? We're probably not going to know the answers for another 20 or 30 years. So I'm happy to debate the finer points of this issue. I could say, oh, I just don't care. But for the sake of the conversation, I'm going to say, like, we should have a conversation about standards. We should have a conversation. If a trans person is, they kind of finally come to the realization that they're trans, and they're 15 years old and they want to compete in a combat sport, or if they want to compete in a very physical sport, then we should have a conversation about what's needed in order to allow them to compete in that sport. And obviously we're limiting it from, male to female, or we'll get to the correct terminology, and I'll cede my time for now.
Okay, and we're going to go lastly to CTV.
Well, since I got ran over and skipped, I'll take a moment to say I'm critically thinking veteran. I served 9 years on Ohio-class submarines, right? So I got a hell of a lot of experience with a whole lot of nothing, right? But what I will say on the issue of transgenders competing in sports is that the Olympics doesn't have any standards for individuals that transfer from male to female, or transition rather from male to female, but they have standards, or correction, standards for females that transition to male, but they don't have, but they do have standards so far as testosterone levels for males that transition to female. It certainly seems that the Olympics already off the start is pointing out that there's a difference between the two, which is perfectly fine, right? I think that understanding people's differences is exactly what needs to be understood in order for this topic to be the most understood, right? Because we do have a lot of examples from a lot of different sports, i.e. cycling and running and powerlifting, and a whole lot of instances where transgender individuals were able to come into women's categories and completely dominate, not just a little bit, like they dominate the sport, right? Which doesn't create or harbor a fair competitive environment when it comes to sports. Now, these things are important when it comes to sports that have been delineated along very physical types of confrontation that would happen between the people, right? So that's why we segregate the sports to men and then one to women when it comes to more physical altercations, right? That way, There's not any disparity of force, but the reality is that any individual, once they go through puberty, right, if they had the added benefit of going through puberty as a male, right, and they gained the broader shoulders, the bigger muscle mass, the bigger skeletal system that they have, there's already a lot of advantages that they have from Jump Street. Testosterone levels, while you can bring those down, don't change the fact that you already went through puberty as a male and are now competing against women in these sports. So I feel like that the best and most fair way would be to keep the system as is. And if trans people want to compete in the sport, have them compete against other trans individuals. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Okay. Now I'm going to throw it over to general discussion. You may go back and forth, discuss the topic, etc.
Yeah, basically, everything that CTV just said is verifiably incorrect. The idea that there is a dominance by trans women in sports is simply not true. There is no data to show that whatsoever. And in fact, the data that does exist shows the opposite of that. That there is actually very, like no comment chick sort of joked about at the beginning. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of trans people winning in these sports right now, which would indicate that there is no, that would indicate that there's no statistical advantage if we've had these standards for a long time.
Wait, you mean CTV's fear mongering?
Yeah, fear mongering.
No
but
way.
the other thing too is that it's really funny because first of all, a lot of this conversation, at least here in the United States, is fixated on high school sports. Which, I mean, there's a number of reasons for that. There is a certain element of protect the kids rhetoric that's pulled upon, which I think is very low and disgusting. But also, what people don't note is that even what biological differences do occur by the end of puberty, the data that does exist currently shows that those benefits are not conferred pre-puberty, and that they are not conferred if puberty is halted. And so it seems to be that most of the quote unquote biological advantages that come from having testosterone in your system is from having active testosterone in your system. And there really isn't much more to be said about the situation there. Also, the standards that are put forward by most conservatives, the idea that, we should have a special trans league, which is, in my opinion, on its face discriminatory. But the other idea
that's what we do in everything is we make discriminatory,
yeah, we used to do that.
You do that. You do that.
Everybody does that.
No,
we used to do that.
Stop. Okay, so there's this thing with our ears that's really magical, but also extremely hurtful to us when trying to take information. When we have three people yelling at each other, we can't hear shit. So you'd think you'd get 3 times the information, but we actually get none of the information. So I would like to hear CTV finish the statement, and then there could be a response.
He interrupted me.
We as human beings discriminate
for a while.
He's a dude. It's okay.
No.
Okay.
Like, wow. No comment, chick. What the fuck is that? It's because really.
Okay.
Are you not paying attention to the conversation?
Okay.
That's ridiculous.
Okay.
That's utterly ridiculous.
Okay. That was quick. Okay. So
may I?
Who said may I?
Connor.
Yeah, Connor, you did raise your hand, but that engagement didn't end, so I feel like we need to get an end to it.
Okay,
so
let's finish the engagement and I'll wait.
Okay, so CTV, what you were saying was that there are discriminatory decisions made when it comes to separating
everybody.
people.
Look, it doesn't matter what you're doing. There's discriminations that are made, right? Because not everything is exactly the same. Whenever you walk down the street, you make discriminatory decisions about maybe you don't walk down this way, right? Or if you're participating in a sport, right? Matter of fact, NASCAR would be one where they make sure that all the vehicles are within certain vehicle specifications, right? In other sports, right, they make sure that males are competing against males, right? Females are competing against females, right? There's a lot of discrimination when it comes to trying to harbor an environment of fair play between individuals, right? So the idea that there's supposed to be no discrimination is completely crazy, right? And the fact that you can't understand that why there should be any at all is in fact, again, crazy to me, right? So you're going to have to lay it out pretty hard for me to be able to get where you're at.
Okay, DemonMama.
How many people do you...
Oh, I just went, that was directed pretty at DemonMama. So DemonMama, Connor, then Hutch. We'll put in that order.
Yeah, I wish I could. I wish I could make sense of what CTV is saying here, but honestly, it just sounds like fear mongering drivel. I don't even know what I'm supposed to pull out of that. The idea that like that somehow forcing trans people to perform in a league all of their own, that would not grant them like access to the rest of the sporting world is somehow the same thing as when you choose to walk down a different road. Like, this is nonsense. This makes no. I don't even know how to respond to that. The only thing that I would say is that the standards that are usually put forward by people like CTV are like incredibly ill-informed, and also ignore the fact that FTM trans people exist, aka people who are assigned female at birth and transition using testosterone to male. And these people, when they have testosterone in their bloodstream from HRT, perform better, because as it turns out, it's all about your active, almost exclusively your active testosterone levels, which resides in your system for a little while, usually is completely out of your system by about a year, maybe 2 years at max, based on the data. And people like CTV, if we were to follow their prescription for it, would have either trans people completely isolated to out of the world of sports into their own little separate but equal, quote unquote, league, segregated, or would advocate for FTM individuals to be competing against cis women who do not have testosterone in their system to the same degree, and would actually demonstrably, statistically, be able to defeat the competition because they're taking T actively. This is just, it's just silly. This is silliness, as usual.
Okay.
Okay.
What was that?
You literally just say that
Guys, come
FTMs,
on.
right? They did not go through the hormonal process of puberty. They did not develop bigger skeletal frames, right? And they did not develop the muscle mass and
Oh,
everything
Jesus
else
Christ.
associated with having a bigger body is somehow going to be able to come in and crush the men's competition. Did you
Yes,
really just say
and there's
that?
evidence of it.
ATV,
Yes,
they could kick
yes,
your
and there's
ass.
Oh my
evidence of it.
God.
Damn, I gotta
Okay,
go.
okay, okay,
Wow.
okay,
Wow.
See, the good thing about starting with this topic is you get all of it out now, and so later everyone's gonna be super chill. Okay, so we're gonna go over to Connor now, because I can't hear anything that anyone's saying. Connor,
Okay.
take us away from that.
Sure. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Sound good.
Okay, so I'm gonna introduce a rule only for myself, and then I'm gonna go into my points. If I'm talking a lot, I'm going on a fucking 5-minute rant, and you say the word interjection, I will say accept or decline. Basically, meaning that if you want to make a point while I'm making some points, I will allow you to speak, so you don't have to scream over me if I make a point that you think is dumb as fuck. Okay, if you guys want to adopt that rule too, I think it would be
Interjection.
cool. If you don't, declined. So basically, like I'll start making my points now. Some sports don't even need to be on the table. Okay, some things that are coming to my mind right now are like volleyball or field hockey or soccer or something like that. These are team sports. They're generally speaking not contact oriented. They don't even need to be on the fucking table, because even if you have like a what would you call it? A person who was assigned male at birth but then was transitioning to being a woman. If they competed in these sports, they're a part of a team. It's a team effort. It doesn't really fucking matter. They can be as athletic as they want. They still have to contribute to a team in order for that team to succeed. So that, like, some sports we can already take off the table. So one of the things that was mentioned is if puberty is halted, there's no conferred advantage. CTV, I want to make this point. People now, especially because the transgender issue is much wildly more aware in the social discourse. Some people are transitioning before they go through a normal puberty, and effectively, if you look at some of these people, some of the assigned male at birth who transfer to women who go on puberty blockers and then sex hormones, they're virtually indistinguishable from anybody else, because they basically skip their puberty. So that's where we need to have a more nuanced conversation about what we're doing here. To Steelman CTV, I promise I have one more point after this. To Steelman CTV's language about discrimination, he's not talking about individualistic discrimination, saying like, oh, I'm going to discriminate against a certain person. He's talking about using judgment. And I understand what he's saying with using judgment, because we do have to make a judgment. We have to make a judgment about endocrinological levels. We have to make a judgment about what kind of sports we don't even give a shit about. We have to decide whether or not we care about female to male folks in sports at all. And I will to articulate why you've never seen a conservative talk about female to male at all, is because basically most dudes already have a fuckload of testosterone, right? So if you take an assigned female at birth person, you start giving them T, and they kind of become buff or whatever. I'm a big fan. This is a little bit of a meme. I'm a big fan of trans-inclusionary radical misogyny, where we just accept all the female to male trans folks into our big old fucking male club, and then we all fucking eat hot wings and drink Bud Light. But like, that's what I'm saying. Like, nobody gives a fuck about this. We can narrow the conversation down to male to female, what sports, combat sports, endocrinological levels, what's fair, what's appropriate. We can narrow the conversation.
Hutch, I think you're next.
Yeah. So I just want to point out that the only reason why we're having this conversation right now is because of Obergefell versus Hodges in 2015. They lost the culture war when it came to gay marriage. There was just nowhere to go beyond that point. And so what did they do? They moved on to the next boogeyman, which is why I think what Tulsi Gabbard did was particularly odious. She doesn't give a fuck about this issue. She's just trying to get more people to sign up on her shitty Dave Rubin locals page or whatever. So I just want to point out that is literally the only reason we're having this conversation right now. Trans athletes have been a thing for decades right now. Why has it only been in the last 5 years that this has become such a hot topic? And it's because it's a wedge issue. It's an issue that conservatives, they know that they can serve this up to their base, and it's going to get them really pissed off. None of them give a fuck about women's sports before, and here they are all of a sudden, talking about the integrity of competition within like high school volleyball games or something like that.
Yeah, some would say it's a proxy issue for the validity of trans people, which is the put on the table, that it's a proxy way of doing that without seeming like a complete asshole.
Of course, that's what it is. Yes, and
absolutely.
I wrote a few things down, so I just want to keep my thoughts all organized, just to kind of segue into something else, but on the same topic here. But we know by now, we have the data that shows us that affirming and I'm talking specifically about athletics when it comes to kids. We know how important it is to affirm a child's gender identity at a very young age. We can see a correlation between doing that and less rates of suicidal ideation and suicide attempts. So on this topic, it just seems like such a no-brainer. Do we really care so much about trying to achieve perfect fairness in sports, or are we trying to teach kids about cultivating a sense of confidence in themselves and learning how to be a teammate to others? These things are obviously far more important than trying to achieve this perfect fairness in sports, which is inherently impossible. If you have a 6'5" kid who's 14 years old, is it fair that this person is playing basketball with all the other kids who have an average height of 4'10" or whatever? No, but we
shouldn't discriminate at all then, right?
Well, personally,
let me get to.
I'm not supposed to give my opinion, but I personally love pelting the smaller kids with dodgeballs, and I think taking that experience away from me would be very harmful.
Of course, I don't want to take that away from anybody, but
I'm just we shouldn't discriminate at all then, right?
Zero
discrimination at all.
Well, because you asked that question.
Is that the solution here?
Well, I don't think discrimination is the word that I don't think that's the word you're quite looking for here. But
CTV's just trying to get a gotcha on you. There's no substance. You can ignore him.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
I would not like to encourage the ignoring of different panel guests. Okay, that is one thing I will discourage.
You can ignore that.
Okay. I wrote a couple other things down.
Hold on. Since apparently there's some kind of fucking meme going on. The word discrimination means the ability or power to see or make fine distinctions or discernment, right? So if you have a fucking problem with that word, that's your fucking problem.
Let's admit that it's a loaded word. CTV,
right?
Let's admit that it's a loaded word. It's a loaded word.
If you want to see something that's fucking loaded, then you see it as loaded. right?
No,
Was
but
that a
okay,
threat?
can we admit that
No, it is not.
discrimination was
Okay,
kind
let's
of
calm down.
used against like black people in the past, and maybe we could just use judgment instead of discrimination, and then they would lose this fucking meme, and they wouldn't be
Seems
able
like-
to talk about that
Well,
word
I
anymore.
use the
Well,
fucking
hold on a
language
second.
I
Wait.
used according to my dialect and the way that I fucking speak, and you learn how I speak since I come
I don't-
from a different part of the country.
Okay,
Just
I don't
like
wanna-
everybody else on the fucking panel wants their voices to be heard and respected. So instead of having this snarky fucking attitude, like, I don't know, somebody else on this fucking panel, right? How about we actually start trying to listen in good faith instead of being snarky little I don't knows, right?
I mean,
Okay,
I do
alright.
think it's ironic that you're asking for us to listen in good faith when damn near every person I've ever talked to would recognize that there's a difference between the dictionary definition of discriminate, meaning being able to make distinctions between two separate things, and the colloquial version of discrimination, or the legal distinction, the legal
Oh, I'm
term.
sorry. Did I
discrimination.
join a panel that's supposed to be made up of some type of intellectuals that will be able to use the definitions of words that are actually in a fucking
I
dictionary?
mean, aren't you
Did
kind
I,
of, aren't you,
or
aren't
did
you
I
including
literally
yourself?
just show up to fucking WWE and all I got to do is make you look like an ass? Is that what this
It
is?
sounds like
What
you're
is this
taking up
now?
an issue with your own inability to
Is that what it
discriminate
is?
between different words, and maybe
Hello,
Are you
should
going to
take
answer
some
the
time to
question or
calm
just
down.
avoid it?
You didn't ask a very good
Are you
question.
going to answer the
I'm not
question or
going to
just
honor
avoid
it.
it?
God damn.
CTV,
Okay.
you don't
Okay.
need anyone to make you look like an ass. You do a fine job yourself.
Okay.
Okay, in the interest of getting
yes.
like
I was
back
going to
on
actually,
the
I was actually
topic-
going to throw it over to Kay because you raised your hand
Okay,
earlier.
so if we're going to discriminate based in the world of sports, like why has the conversation boiled down to trans individuals anyway? I mean, Hutch brought up a perfect scenario of, everybody hits puberty and goes through the transition of life differently at different stages at different times. Whenever I was in high school, regrettably, I was on the basketball team, and there was this one girl, 6'5", just towered over all of the rest of us, and everybody used to say that she should be playing against on the guys' team. She should be playing against the guys because nobody could get around her. It was like running into a brick wall. There are exceptions as far as all different sexes, gender identities, whether you're trans, whether you're cis. Why are we making the discrimination simply based on trans individuals? Why is it that we have the divide between male and female sports? And
Can
who
I-
decided at what point that we were going to divide them up? Because, my 6-year-old brother plays with girls whenever he plays basketball. At what point did we decide that we needed to make that just clear-cut divide between the sexes, where trans individuals feel like they are kind of stuck in the middle and they don't have a place to engage in sports?
Yeah.
Hey,
Sorry, go ahead.
You bring up a really good point because as time goes on, and as more and more people choose to identify as non-binary, we have another problem, which is that a binary sports system doesn't really make room for them. And there is issues with this. In fact, there have been propositions for different ways of more equitably separating sports that actually isn't based on an arbitrary sex. Now, why we did it in the past is because we had certain understandings, certain assumptions were made, and there are broad generalizations about the presence of testosterone, which, testosterone gives some musculature advantages. Interestingly, as it turns out, the bone structure discussion as well as the bone mass, neither of those things seem to be particularly directly advantageous, except in very, very specific instances, which could be easily adjusted for. But there has been propositions for using different systems for stratifying sports that doesn't involve.
So what are those
people-
instances? What are
What
those
do you mean?
instances?
Athletic performance.
You said that
tier-
there's
you tier-
instances, right? I'm assuming that you
Sure.
know what you're
Yeah,
talking about
yeah,
when
I
you say
do,
that. So
actually. I do
please
know what I'm talking
lay out these instances.
Yeah, sure. I can give you an example of that. In the same way that, like wrestling, for example, is split by weight class. Likewise, if you went through male puberty, and you developed slightly larger bone mass, you would have more body weight, which could impact you. It could impact the competitivity of a sport like wrestling. However, it actually wouldn't really much affect something like, say, swimming or rowing. Rowing has, in fact, almost no difference between cis men and cis women, there's almost no difference in competitive advantage, even with active testosterone. So there's a whole, believe it or not, yeah, I know this has been studied. And
sorry for frowning.
No, it's fine. It's one of those things where there's actually information on this, and I wouldn't expect you, CTV, to know any of this, especially with how brashly you talk about these topics. But yeah, this has been studied, and yeah, there are very, very slim incidences where it could make some difference, but we already know that there are differences even among members of the same sex, that there are differences between some men who are like 6'4" and have massive bones, and smaller men, like, I don't know, I'm just thinking right now of, like, I don't know, The Undertaker versus Rey Mysterio or something, like men of completely different size and build who are in different weight classes. So it's like, yeah, it's one of those things where there's actually really simple answers to most of these questions, and it gets obfuscated because of hate. And that is what it is. It is about hate.
Can I unobfuscate?
Yeah,
please?
Connor, you're gonna do something, and then I'm gonna see if I can try to
See
go.
if you can call on me after that. You know what I'm saying? I want to hop
Yeah,
in here.
yeah. Well, Trihex, at any point, if you want to like hop in, or you can't hop in for whatever reason, if you can't because you don't like, it's just too much Ellie, raise your hand or write your name down. We'll get to you eventually.
Okay. Officially raised after Connor.
Okay. No worries. Connor, you good?
Yeah. So okay. So culture war next boogeyman. Like this is part of what's frustrating about the conversation. I'm sorry if I'm making it about rhetoric and shit, but at the same time, like, I know CTV. CTV's not a bad dude. He just has some fucking skeptical bullshit about his fucking about what's going on. And this is actually the difference between conservatism and traditionalism. So conservatism is giving progressives and liberals and fucking all those people shit about their fucking ideas so we can codify their ideas, so we can make their fucking ideas better. And then if there's an idea worthy of adoption, we move society forward. However, if there's bad ideas and we give shit to those bad ideas and those bad ideas die, then those bad ideas die. That's the social function of conservatives, okay? That is different than traditionalism. And traditionalism would just be holding on to fucking traditions for the sake of fucking traditions, okay? So one of the things that you're going to have to do as progressive advocates, as people who are pro-trans in sports, all that kind of stuff, is you're going to have to communicate. You're going to have to communicate to parents. You're going to have to communicate to religious leaders. You're going to have to communicate to sports leagues why it's acceptable for all of these memes that CTV is saying, but are legitimate. If you think CTV's objections to what's going on here are what parents are going to say, I promise you, this is the PG fucking version of what parents are going to say about fucking high school sports. So these concerns need to be addressed, whether you like them or not. And no, I'm not going to accept your interjection. And then, so gender confirmation as a perfect example. Hutch, you brought up gender confirmation and how it basically helps people, right? So if you go into conservative circles, libertarian circles, or whatever, the only thing that you're going to see is the Ben Shapiro fucking statistic that, like the single study that post-surgery suicidal ideation or suicidal consideration is the same as before surgery or whatever. They don't have this information. You have to communicate this information to them, and you have to say that a teenager's evolution as an individual and their parents and social acceptance is incredibly important to their social well-being. That's an argument that a conservative or a libertarian can't even refute, because basically they're all about social cohesion. They're all about the social unit functioning, the family, all that kind of fucking bullshit. So telling them, hey, don't treat your trans daughter like shit, and maybe they won't think about suicide, that's a pretty strong and compelling argument. DemonMama, I promise I'm almost done. So Kay brought up, why does sex even matter? These things are arbitrary. I used to play with somebody who was 6'4". Do we even need to make these judgments about sports? Yes, we need to make these judgments about sports, because if you just want to say, hey, we don't have to make any kind of fucking standards about what we do here, then basically people like me, I'm 6'4", I'm 210 pounds. I used to be fucking athletic before I fucking busted up my fucking back. I will fucking bat the fucking ball out of your goddamn face every single time you go up for a fucking shot. We have to make judgment. I'm almost done, I promise. We have to make judgments about what we're doing with sports. And when CTV asks you, hey, what are those judgments? That shouldn't be an opportunity to call him a fucking asshole. It should be an opportunity to explain to him the better system that you are proposing. And with that, I yield.
He's not asking out of curiosity, buddy.
Why are you assuming his intentionality?
Listen to the tone of it. Listen to the tone of his voice. That it was
okay. Do you want to call him a piece of shit for the next hour, or do you want to sell your ideology?
I don't think he's a piece of shit. First of all, I don't know how to sell my ideology to someone like CTV. I don't really think it's my responsibility.
Well, then
I'm
you
just
know, if
like-
you took a little bit
You're
more
on a
time
political
to sit and
panel show.
listen.
It's your fucking responsibility.
Listen, hold on a second. If I can butt in here real quick.
Okay,
First
one
of all,
moment before you butt in. Trihex has been waiting patiently, hasn't said anything
sure.
the whole show.
Waiting patiently. So I feel like we're debating and arguing over certain points here, and I just want to take a second to kind of reframe. Like, is the issue with the whole trans athletes being inserted into sports as we know it right now with our general like men women divisions here? Is the issue over the integrity of the sport? Because I feel like a lot of this comes down to like the high school iterations of certain, as Connor put here, contact oriented sports. And I'm trying to understand here. Well, is the point of high school sports more to like facilitate like social engagement and maybe perhaps explore like career possibilities if you're like gifted in that situation or whatever? Or is it more about like pure competitive, like objective fairness in the sport? Because I feel like a professional league would be more oriented on or more fixated on that. And the high school one's probably more about just like allowing and fostering of the passion of the sport. And if you want to go further in, then go for a career in it. Again, I could be wrong on that obviously here. I just wanted to make sure that we clarified what is our beef with the trans athletes being put in here. Is it competitive integrity and objective fairness, or is it some other shit here?
And I'll shut up very briefly. That's beautifully said. I think people who are arguing against transgender folks in sports probably haven't even thought about that question. So that's beautifully said, a perfect thing to consider. What are we actually objecting to?
Yeah.
To me, it sounds more like one of the same thing, right? Because I don't want to harbor an environment if the professional league, I would feel like that they would be better suited for setting up, whatever it is that they want to set up as far as competing in any kind of sport that they want. But at the high school level, I feel like that's where you should definitely be engaging in what would be absolute fair play, delineated along the sexes, right? Male and female. And that way, in that environment for the majority of the population, there is the environment of fair play and competition and learning what it means to win and also learning what it means to lose sometimes, right? Because you can't win them all. But whenever
You know that better than anyone.
Whenever you're, what was that for? What was that for? Did that serve any purpose in the debate? Did you just want my attention? Do you need to feel special? Is that what it is?
I want your attention,
Apparently,
Daddy.
right?
Can you give me more attention, Daddy?
Let's not do. Okay, look, we're not gonna do that here. Okay, we're not. No, I've added. Okay, well, I've added. Daddy is now another banned word. Okay, I've added it right now. Officially on the list. Yeah, no D-bombs here. Okay.
Take that, patriarchy. Take that. Yes, we banned the D word. Okay.
That's the D word with a hard Y is now banned.
No more daddies. Irene ruins everything.
Yep.
There's no reason to there's no conversation to be had here with somebody as bad faith as no comment chick has been being, right?
Well,
since the start it's been nothing but bad faith, right? You've done nothing but just interject whenever there's like some semblance of a conversation happening and it involves my voice. You do this, right? So clearly there's something going on there. I'm not sure what it is. But perhaps maybe you should take a look in the mirror and self-reflect a bit instead of having some kind of crush on me, right? So
can't because I've got a gator in front of my face. I literally can't.
I do not. I no longer care about this engagement. So it's over.
Me neither.
Yeah. Okay. Don't do that like you weren't half of that at least, the very least.
Excuse me?
Wait.
What?
Are you kidding? What? Demon. Okay, no, I don't even want to hear the comment. Okay, so we're gonna move on from this.
Honestly, I'm really interested. Please tell me what I did there. I was quiet for the last 10 minutes. What?
You just said, excuse me, what, at the top of your voice. I was talking to no comment chick. Did I say DemonMama or did I say no comment chick?
Yes, you did say me.
Okay, then I meant no comment chick. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's easy to get us mixed up.
Okay, we're gonna move on. Is anybody on the list now, or should we just move on to the next topic? We've been going on this for about 45 minutes to 50 minutes.
I did actually have some things that I wanted to say.
Okay, you can say something and we'll move on.
I don't entirely disagree with some of the things that you brought up, Connor. Like, the thing is, I've talked to, in this line of work and long before I ever streamed, I've talked to a lot of parents about trans stuff. I've talked to a lot of people about it. And the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of people who are just malinformed, but there's also a lot of people who are simply resistant to being informed at all or caring. And it does come from a position in a lot of cases of just raw discrimination. And there's a lot of people who are pushing disinformation, knowingly, in fact. People like you mentioned, Ben Shapiro. People like Ben Shapiro and many, many others. Keep in mind that this goes all the way down the conservative line as far as media goes on trans issues. They're pushing like obvious disinfo. The study that you referred to specifically, is a Johns Hopkins University study that's almost 40 years old now. And it is not only was it critiqued at its time, but it has gone down in history as one of the most off-base studies about trans individuals that's ever been done. It was an incredibly flawed study. And that's yet nonetheless pushed all the time to justify this sort of weird fear-mongering about trans people. And again, while I understand what you're trying to get at with CTV, I can't help but feel like, at least for my speaking for myself, but especially also for Hutch and Trihex and even No Comment Chick, despite No Comment Chick getting a little more spicy with CTV than I have today, we've all made really fact-based attempts, and then there's been a focus on words like discriminate and an obvious and a very, very blatant misrepresentation of the argument. When I was talking about how there are better systems that we could use to separate this, I was then questioned on, well, what are the specific situations where bone density might matter? But which is fine, and I'm more than willing to discuss that. But then when it's then used as a launching point to act victimized about how I'm trying to communicate to the audience where these things are important, what has been studied and what hasn't been, I can't help but feel that it is a form of obfuscation. It's a way of rolling down the clock so that you can spit out that I think that men and women are the only things that exist and they should just be, trans people should be put in a league of their own, which to me is just very, very misinformed and also patently incorrect.
Okay, so we're going to go into outros on this. We're going to go in the top left-hand corner. We're going to go around, and then Phil's going to introduce himself, and then the announcement I've been building for the last month is going to be announced before going to the next topic. So we're going to start in the top-hand corner with Hutch.
I've said everything. I'm good.
Okay.
I appreciate the discourse. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, short and sweet.
Beautiful.
I don't know what order. His order is different than my order,
K.
so.
I said K next.
Okay, so for me, like I want to kind of put out there because Connor made a great point about, how it's easy to get offended and get upset, and then we just start yelling at each other. Nothing productive happens. But to kind of go on the flip side, trans individuals are having to deal with just horrible hate day in and day out, constantly from right-leaning people. And whenever we're having these conversations, these extremely heated conversations, I think that it's really easy to see something that's in bad faith, even if it might not be in bad faith. And so I think that whenever we're having these conversations, it's really important to remember the things that trans people are have to go through, the things that are said to them on a regular basis, the constant uphill battle that they're having to fight just for their existence to be acknowledged and accepted, is something that everybody should really keep in mind whenever we're discussing these topics.
Okay. Next is going to be CTV.
So, I didn't hear anything that changed my mind. All I heard was a bunch of snarkiness, right? So, after all the research that I did today and all week in preparation for this topic, I didn't see anything tonight that deviated my opinion of it beforehand. I still see lots of examples where trans athletes got involved in women's sports and they completely dominated the field, right? I saw the differences.
You named
that the
none of
Olympic-
those.
No, that's not how this works. No comment, chick.
Ooh.
Name
No,
one.
Okay.
no comment, chick. I just said that's not how this works. You're gonna be muted until it's your time to speak. Continue, CTV.
Yeah, so because this is the Hippy Dippy by Dylan Burns, not the no comment chick with no viewers, right? So, since we weren't able to get into any of that because we had somebody that would do that very example right there, there was no way that we could have any type of a genuine conversation about the topic at hand, right? So, with that being said, I wish that we would have had an opportunity for me to be able to bring up the examples that I went and even bothered fucking looking up, right? Because I genuinely do care about individuals being treated fairly, and I do care about fair competition in sports. I don't want somebody that's going into it just looking at it and go, why the fuck am I having to compete in this, right? We do a lot of discriminating. That's why we create weight classes. That's why we create, you know, different categories for people to be able to compete in, right? Like we literally do that. But, you know, we don't want to talk about that or the facts or anything to do with reality. We want to stay locked into this echo chamber where we start yelling at people about their opinion and everything else and not trying to participate meaningfully. Phil, I'm glad you're here now, brother. I'm hoping the next 2 hours is going to be much better, right? Because this one right here was complete shit, brother. You didn't miss nothing, all right?
I still regret not being here, sir.
We're gonna throw it now over to Trihex.
Bro, okay, I don't even, my point was, I'm gonna pivot here, man. Like, it's like trans are completely dominating. Like, you haven't said one, and then you're sitting here bragging about how you have all this research and have all this citation over all these sources here of definitive trans domination in sports, and you didn't even name it in your outro. I got them all, bro. I got them all, bro. Like, oh my god, dude, you're killing me, CTV. You're killing me right now. But anyways, though, I guess because we're not responding to anything now, even though I did, fucking whatever, though. Yeah, I wish we were talking more about what the system we were advocating for rather than just what we're against at this point. So if we are against trans athletes in sports because there's like an attack on the integrity of the sport, or there's like a unfair advantage or whatever the issue was, I would look at it more like what is our priority? What is our clear objective here? And it comes down to like if trans youth has like an abnormally high suicide rate, then I would say like that probably to me resides as like a higher priority to address, and that there's a societal like lack of acceptance, and I feel like having them be helped to feel accepted is probably a higher priority to kind of just bring suicide rates down, particularly here if we as society aren't doing all we can to help the situation in the first place. So I would look at that as like the priority of what I want to address, which I guess kind of a boring topic because it's more about the boring like societal cultural pressure of like being trans and trying to endure the transition so that you become who you feel accepted as and born as or whatever. But that is kind of the real issue I look at here, as opposed to just like the integrity of the sport. That's like kind of like like Connor was saying here, it's a moving target while you're on a bullet train. Because it's good. Like even then, right now, I argue that like our current, you know, men's class, women's class situations are already incredibly antiquated and completely outdated. But that is a different topic for a different day, though. So with that, I conclude.
Next. Okay. Next, I'm going to throw it over to Counterpoints.
Yeah. So basically, I think Trihex brought up a really good point. Like, what are we trying to do here? And I think conservatives need to ask themselves that question. Are we trying to bar transgender folk from sports? Are we trying to, protect young girls? Are we trying to make sure that we have an even playing field? Are we trying to socialize our children, which I think should be the priority of youth sports, is socializing our kids and giving them an incredible outlet with which to participate in society. Basically talking about trans suicidality and like all that kind of stuff. You typically, I'm sure there's probably about a bajillion studies. Most people feel less depressed, less anxious, less suicidal when they're integrated into what feels like a tribe or a group or a community. So really, like, I think those are important questions that you can kind of like, I identify as on the right, but at the same time, I am not a person who thinks that rhetoric doesn't do anything. I can be swayed on certain issues. I think these are powerful punches that you can use against conservative people who just don't want to have transgender people in sports because they have some internal, like they have some kind of transphobia. I think you can use this rhetoric. What are we trying to do? Is it about the integrity of the sport? Is it about social engagement? Is it about including people? If you actually care about trans suicidality, why don't you look at the study that says that actual gender affirming care decreases suicidality? Why don't you try to improve their communitarian relationships? These are all things that you can use rhetorically to beat up on the right without calling them just like antiquated, bigoted pieces of shit. So I yield.
On the mainstream. Okay. Yeah, DemonMama.
Thank you very much. Trihex, I really, really appreciate you bringing up what you brought up. Something that I want to talk about here is trans people, of which I am one, are excluded, targeted, and hated in damn near every field that I can imagine right now. We are the hate of the month for a lot of conservative mouthpieces, if not the conservative party in America as a whole. And it's really fucking sad. And what's worse is that these sort of issues are totally proxy wars for a larger conversation about the direction of culture in America, and literally young trans people are paying the price. Like the rate of trans people being kicked out of their family, dropping out of school, having suicidal ideation, the depression levels are staggering. And this has been studied again and again, and we know what the cause is. The cause is that they're treated poorly in society, that they're targeted constantly, that young trans people have to see themselves never represented in media except as the target of hateful rhetoric, of being treated like some kind of an alien that's invading spaces or that's trying to take over things. It's horrible, and it's really, really bad. It's gotten out of control. When I watch mainstream media, the only messaging that I see ever, and I'm 30 years old. I'm a trans elder at this point. But I know that the kids out there see nothing but them being characterized as aliens, as being characterized as invaders, and characterized as somehow wanting to corrupt the like spirit of good sport. And honestly, it's sad. It makes me sad, and it's wrong. And we should be able to stand against this, especially because there's just no data. There's no data that says that there's any controversy to be had here. And I think that was shown on this panel. And while I understand that some people can be frustrated at the implication that their views are bigoted, at the same time, there's also just a capitalization on the time of these discussions sent to people being mad about what they think they might be being implied by somebody who's just trying to argue in the favor of people being able to be included in sports that they deserve to be included in. I don't believe that a worldview that pushes for separate but equal or further othering trans people is a good one. And I fight strongly against that. Trans rights and trans thriving.
Okay, now No Comment Chick is going to have their ending statement. I will say, everybody, that
Actually, her and she, her. Thanks. Yeah, no, like as much as everybody thinks
Wait,
I'm probably gonna go.
Didn't I say there?
I go by she, her, though.
Okay,
You used
okay.
there, but that's okay. Like, you didn't know. So as much as everyone is thinking that I'm going to use this opportunity to go after CTV again, I'm going to defy your expectations here and speak to one of my many viewers. Actually, I've got like a lot more viewers than normal. Like, yeah, tonight they wanted to know, you know, so yeah, I don't know. They they must love me dunking on chuds or something. But like, you know, as far as the separate league comment, which somebody else made too, DemonMama was kind of like making fun of that. She was memeing on that, right? And the reason it's ridiculous is because we've already had separate leagues. It's a very bad part of our history. You know, sports used to be segregated by race. You know, like there's a precedent for that, and it's an ugly precedent. But you know, like for people who really love have some kind of fetish for discrimination, I guess that might be appealing somehow, to force people to, you know, play in their own league for reasons which, you know, I guess you didn't have time to get into tonight. I'm sure there are many, and you know, DemonMama and I would love to take them on one by one and knock them down. But honestly, CTV, all you're bringing is anecdote Andy shit tonight. So how do you expect me to respect you after that?
Right. So you say
Okay,
you're not gonna
see-
get into me, but then you end it with me.
Mute. CTV, you know the rules. I muted her. I muted you. Well, this is, everybody's getting muted today. It's a fun little experiment. Now, KOE.
You're tough but fair.
KOE. You can introduce yourself, and then I will make the announcement of what I've been working on for the last 4 months.
Doing this evening. Can we all hear me, folks?
Yes.
Oh, we do. Ah, wonderful, wonderful. It is a pleasure to be here on Dylan Burns TV. Folks, what are you doing? Like, share, subscribe. Fastest growing internet community out there, and you are here at the ground floor. I am the devilishly handsome outlaw himself, your king of extreme, Phil KOE, here to lend you all of my analysis to this amazing show and this amazing community. You can find me over at KOE Nation on YouTube. I do different varying reviews of liquors or whatever kind of libation you can imagine. I do poetry readings on Wednesdays, all kinds of fun stuff over at the KOE Nation. You can also find me over at the Dog and Chicken Show, and I'm an occasional guest star for the Tomfoolery Show and Dads Worldwide. But enough about that, folks. I am just so thrilled to be here. I am glad to finally get here. It's been quite a day. Work held me up a little bit. So sorry. I was going to be here a little earlier, but I am here now. I could tell you what went wrong, but it would basically just be a series of curse words and talking about why farm semis don't work under cold weather. So we could just move on from that. And it is just glorious to be here with all of you. Raise a glass to yourselves, folks. If you're out there, it's Friday night. You should be enjoying some sort of libation. And with all that being said, Mr. Burns, thank you for having me this evening, sir. And I yield back the balance of my time to you.
Wonderful. So now everybody's muted because I've been working on this for 4 months, and so a while ago, everybody here at the Dylan Burns TV community putted funds towards a secret project. I didn't give anybody any hints about what it was. I've been kept this completely under lock. A very few select people know what I've been working on. But for the last 4 months, I've been trying to figure out how we can change panels on Twitch, because panels on Twitch are getting stale. They're all kind of the same. They're all the same kind of format, and they also are usually in isolated communities. Political Twitch doesn't really reach outside of political Twitch. I've done my best to. I've tried my best to bring people from outside of political Twitch, but I've found that political Twitch has a problem. And that problem is political Twitch wants Twitch to be more like politics, when I think politics, if you're doing politics on Twitch, you need to make it more like Twitch. You need to make it flamboyant. You need to make it, you gotta give it a spice. You gotta give it a certain air to it that makes people want to pay attention, makes people actually care more, not only about the issues, but about the performative nature that Twitch is. And so, for the last 4 months, I've been putting down different ideas on how we can change political Twitch. And I came up with the central idea of a champion's mentality being needed going forward on political Twitch. And so, what I had made is a custom, 100% custom designed Hippy Dippy Championship belt. This is a real belt that I had custom made with the Hippy Dippy logo on the front, Hippy Dippy Champion. You got different belts on the side. You got the Twitch logo. On the other side, you got the YouTube logo. And what I want to make is, when it comes to political Twitch and Twitch generally, there's one face, one name, one champion. And you know what? I think when it comes to this piece of equipment here, this is the type of spice you can add to political discussions and political debate. And not only political debate, but debate generally. We need to reach out more. I want to see people debating video games. I want to see people debating music. I want to see people going through all these different communities. You see Trihex is on this. If you want to debate what's the best Smash main, you can win this belt by debating that. But there's only one face, one name. The problem with modern wrestling, the problem with modern boxing is too many titles, too many belts. You need one face and one name. And that's what this is going to represent. And so, we have a certain match set up to win the first title. And we're about to announce who's going to be going head-to-head for this. Two people diametrically opposed on fundamental issues. Somebody who's had a few problems with Twitch in the past, too. But we have created a custom ranking system to figure out who will be able to challenge for the belt. We have designed special tournaments to see who will challenge for the belt. We have designed battle royales, Royal Rumble style situations. We're in the middle of making tag team championship belts. So tag teams can pair together with custom themes and challenge each other. But on to the announcement. Now everybody who's in the channel right now listening to me is not going to hear the announcement because it's going to be playing some footage on stream quick. So I'm going to play that quickly. It's a quick announcement, and I think everybody will get straight to the point. Let's play that footage real quick. So, as you can see, it's going to be Vosh versus Bastiat, an oil lawyer versus YouTube and Twitch's most popular socialist, going head-to-head on fundamental issues. Two people no more diametrically opposed could you possibly find on the platform. This is what I've been working on for the last 4 months. We're gonna have one face, one name, and hopefully with this we can bring some innovation to debate panels and panels generally, and make a bridge between political Twitch, which is quite isolated, to the rest of Twitch. Get more gamers on, get more IRL streamers on, get more people outside of political Twitch into political Twitch to start that dialogue. I want to see not only people debating politics for this belt, I want to see people debating games and other topics. So this is what I've been working on for the last 4 months. That is scheduled for January 26th at 10 p.m. after an undercard tag team match, which we're still making. Next week, we're going to be testing this new format out, and I'm excited to. You will now all be unmuted. Thank you all. I've been playing this for 4 months, and thank you for your patience. Unmute you all.
Beautifully done.
2022?
No. It's January, February 26th. Sorry, not 2022. Okay. Sorry, February. Gotcha. It's January.
Wonderful. Everybody hype, baby.
Yep, I think it's a decent idea.
Fuck yeah. Nice, buddy.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'd have the video in advance. So you're doing like a a debate battle royale for the belt. Is that?
Well, we're having a 1v1 with between Vosh and Bastiat for the belt originally, and then we're gonna have a battle royale to see who challenges that person, the new champion. We're building up different ways.
Oh, okay,
okay.
Yeah.
Do we get the physical belt?
Yes, you get the physical belt. We sent it out.
Okay,
to you.
all right.
I must
hell in a cell, baby.
I am quite as one of the co-stars to the Revolutionary Wrestling Podcast and a 7-time Revolutionary Wrestling Podcast champion myself, and the only ever KOE champion of the KOE Nation. I must say, sir, that is one of the most spectacular ideas I have ever heard. Podcast championship. Now, I've just got here and met all you wonderful people, and you've already given me something to strive for. Oh, isn't life amazing? But yes, since I'm the king of extreme, the 7-time champion, and the KOE champion, Dylan, amazing idea there, good sir. I cannot wait to see the matchups that are coming and who will be crowned the first ever Hippy Dippy Podcast champion.
Vosh versus Bastiat. Look out for it. We're going to have them shooting promos. We're going to have pre and post fight interviews. We're having the whole shebang. We even have hired a ring announcer to help do commentary over certain things. So we're doing the whole shebang.
That's awesome. Have you told us yet what will they debate? Or is the topic TBA?
It's TBA, but the most likely it's going to be socialism versus capitalism. Got to start on the basics. If we're gonna start with the basics, and then from there, I wanted to eventually get over to every circle of Twitch. I eventually want this to go over to gaming Twitch. I want this to be something that goes through all the different communities. I want this to be something that that helps build a bridge between political Twitch and the rest of Twitch.
Yo, I want a front row seat, man. I'm gonna get my biggest bag of popcorn. I'm ready.
You're gonna be like one of those, in boxing matches, they go into the crowd. It's like, so that's the 3rd division champion who's been wanting to fight. You're scouting the competition. You know what I mean?
I want a fucking belt, dude.
Everybody, who would
here's my other question for you.
Piece of equipment? Who wouldn't? You can wear this, by the way. This is a real belt. You can wear this.
Dylan, I have one more question for you.
Undisputed belts.
Undisputed, yes.
Yes. That's where we got the RWP title.
Sorry. May I ask one more thing here, Dylan?
Yes.
So here's the other thing I have for you. Okay, so I understand here that anyone can get the belt, they can chase after it after the person wins the initial bout. My question is, how would you determine who? Because I feel like you're gonna get a lot of people who want to at you.
This is the problem. I think you're about how do you determine who wins, right?
No, how do you determine who gets the challenge to winner?
Oh, we have a whole rating system. System we've custom designed to basically you can check a list. If you want to enter your name in, we'll put you on a list, and by having other debates with other people, if you want to submit it to us for review, that can move you up the list.
Oh, okay.
So this is a real functional ranking system showing that anyone can hold this belt if they work hard enough. Obviously, the people with clout can get the bigger debates, get more attention, moves them up higher. But this is America, baby. I believe in the American dream. So anybody can really get this. I love Dusty Rhodes. So I'm a fan of the American dream. We can do it, man.
What's Dusty Rhodes, baby? Great American Bash, baby. You cannot wait to see it. Oh God, Dusty. Sorry.
Yes. So
what's the Samuel L. Jackson samurai? What was it? Where he
Afro Samurai?
Afro Samurai, where only number 2 can challenge number 1.
And so the way we're going to find out who wins is we're going to make sure that whatever the topic's being debated, we try to get people from that community to be the judges. So if this is a video game debate, we're getting people from video game Twitch to be the judges. And we're going to have a certain amount of judges. Twitch will, of course, Twitch chat will be able to, of course, vote. But, of course, I always get final say. If I think a decision was completely whack, I can jump in and say, nah, it doesn't make sense. But usually I will not exercise that power. So any questions anybody else would like to ask me about this belt before we go into the next topic?
Nah, it's fucking based.
Wonderful.
Now it's hype, dude.
Rock and
It's good.
roll.
Congratulations.
Very, very, very much.
I want that belt.
Well, got to work for it.
Yeah, that
Okay.
belt, that belt is ripped AF.
I'm the
dude.
hardest working woman on Twitch.
So, we're going to go into the next topic, which is federal gun control. Since the Democrats have taken
Alright.
over the, it's another soft topic. Since the Democrats have taken back over, there's been talk of gun control legislation being passed, and there have been certain bills proposed on the state and national level. So, the question comes out, do we want gun control? Do we not want gun control? But guns, pretty cool. They go bang, bang. Good argument. So we're going to start in the top left-hand corner, as always, with Hutch.
Yeah, so unfortunately, like so much of the gun control debate, I feel like gets sidetracked with clips versus magazines, that sort of thing. Like what does AR-15 stand for instead of the issue that we're actually trying to address. Unfortunately, I think that gun culture is so deeply ingrained in this country that it's really, really difficult to untangle the culture from that sort of historical context. I think that there is a broad I know there's a broad consensus among the American voter base that things like expanded background checks are exceedingly popular. I think something like over 90% of the country thinks that we should have stricter measures when it comes to determining who gets a gun. Things like closing gun show loopholes. But I don't have a whole lot of faith that this country is prepared or really all that motivated to tackle this topic. When we have mass casualty events, mass shooting events, it's in the headlines for a week or so, and then people forget. Usually when you ask people what their priorities are when they're voting, gun control is typically pretty far down that list compared to issues like immigration and foreign policy. So yeah, this is going to be another one of those topics where I'm going to be very eager to hear what you guys have to say. So that's going to do it for my intro. Thank you.
No problem. Moving it over to K Fellows.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of echo sort of what Hutch said. I feel like the gun debate, I honestly hate the gun control debate because I feel like it has just become so politicized and we are accomplishing absolutely nothing. It's just one side versus the other side. It's either you want the government to come and just trample over all of my rights, or you want to see school children get gunned down on a regular basis, and nothing is being accomplished. And it's all the way up to the federal level where we have our sitting politicians just using it to virtue signal to their bases so that they can continue to get elected over and over again. And it's just one of those situations where every election cycle somebody brings up the gun debate, and it's like, well, the left wants to take all your guns, well, the right wants to see school children get gunned down. And unfortunately, I don't see our ability to move forward in this conversation and actually have a productive conversation on how we can prevent school children from being gunned down and still allow law-abiding citizens to have full access to having as many firearms as they want. I'm originally from Texas. They like guns. They like a lot of guns. They like sheds full of guns. And I think that that's great as long as you are not harboring any hatred towards another individual and intending to kill another individual with your guns outside of the realm of self-defense, then you should be able to have as many guns as you want without the federal government being in your business. But I do agree that we do need to do something to try to prevent the number of people that get gunned down on a consistent basis in this country. It is a problem, and we need to start having a conversation about how to fix it.
Okay, we're going to throw it over to CTV.
I feel like anytime we're talking about gun legislation, there's a whole lot of other topics that are being brought up at the same time. The Constitution is framed in such a way to where it guarantees the right of the individual that the federal government will not be infringing on your right to keep and bear arms, right? So any type of legislation that you want needs to be at the state level, right? So moving forward from that, I'm going to say zero legislation at the federal level. And there's no case that you're going to be able to make without you proposing, say, an Article 5 Convention of the States in order to amend the Constitution and then remove the Second Amendment, in which case I think you'll have a much bigger problem on hand, right? But beyond that, I think that if the state wants to put in some type of legislation for whatever possible situation that they have to deal with, that they can do that. So can the counties, right? So can a town, right? Or a city. They can obviously be more strict than the federal government when it comes to some of these rules, right? That's why, like, I use North Carolina as an instance, because that's where I'm from and most familiar with that state constitution. But it lays out the exact language for the Second Amendment that's laid out in the federal, and then includes exceptions when the state can actually regulate that. So that's from the start of the country and the founding of the Constitution in 1787. That was the understood framework then. There's no reason for that framework to be understood any other way now. And that's exactly why people need to start taking a look at their states and not trying to have the federal government do anything like this, because you're going to have a much bigger problem on hand trying to amend the Constitution to be able to do this than if you went to your state and took care of things locally. Because with something like this, you want the power of it to be as close to the individual as possible.
Okay, next we're gonna throw it over to DemonMama.
Yeah, I was looking up the linked legislation, did some reading on it, and I tend to have a kind of a unique position online because I tend to be a pro-gun lefty. I am actually okay with some basic level gun control, as long as it's reasonable and not easily, how do I say, taken advantage of for targeted discrimination. And what I'm saying is that I in the legislation of the latest bill I looked into, and I noticed there's a lot of fixation on criminal background checks, which to me seems like a bit of an oversight, in my opinion, especially given that that last year was the year of us talking on a large scale about how uneven policing is in this country. It seems to me that over-policed communities would be unduly affected by a law that makes criminal background checks a part of the gun control process. And I am actually concerned about that because I think there's a problem with encroaching policing where many, many laws can be written that can allow you to enforce selectively on certain populations in the country. And if they're marginalized populations, that makes it pretty easy to target them. So I do have concerns about that. However, I do think that we need to be willing to address some of the problems we have in this country with guns. American gun culture is beyond toxic. We do not have a culture of gun safety. We have a culture of gun sales that has been run by the NRA for decades upon decades that does not put safety or responsible gun ownership at the forefront. I do believe there is great value in preserving the individual right to own guns. However, I think we must do so carefully because at the end of the day, a gun is a weapon and weapons kill people, and killing people is, well, pretty final as it turns out. I think we should take these things very seriously. And while I do believe, once again, that that individual gun ownership is a good right to have, we need to do so very responsibly. So I'm not opposed on a blanket level to gun control. I just think it needs to be done carefully.
Okay, next I'm gonna throw it over to counterpoints.
Yeah, so this is a very passionate subject of mine. It's something that I care about a lot, deeply. I think the balance of power between the civilians and the government that serves them is incredibly important. I'm very happy and thankful to be born in a country that actually takes that very seriously and instituted it into its Republican framework. That being said, I do agree that something needs to be done, but that something needs to be very targeted. And what I didn't see in HR 127 was anything targeted. I saw very broad sweeping shit that's not going to address anything. It's not going to address criminality. It's not going to address drug dealing. It's not going to address broken communities. It's not going to address broken families. It's not going to address economics. It's not going to address mental health. It's not going to address, all it's going to do is it's going to make you register your fucking weapons. And it's going to make you have increased background checks. That's all it's going to do. So effectively, registration leads to confiscation is something that's commonly said inside the pro-gun community. And what I would like to see instead is, like everybody mentioned before, a real conversation about what we do in order to prevent mass shootings, or at least reduce their frequency, and a real conversation about, excuse me, gang violence, broken families, and broken communities. So I think the left and the progressives, rather than focusing on gun control, have a killer fucking argument when it comes to material conditions, broken families, and improving the lot of the average lives of citizens. And with that, I yield.
Okay, now we're going to throw it over to No Comment Chick.
Yeah, guns are a complicated issue. I am embarrassed to live in like the only first world nation that has as much of a problem, as many guns and as much gun violence and mass, casualty events as we do. But that being said, that's the hand that fate dealt us, and there's, being mad about it isn't going to change it. Much like what DemonMama said, I believe that concentrating on enforcement of gun legislation, in other words, confiscation, right now would be done at the expense of marginalized communities. I feel like the guns that would be taken away from people are the guns that are protecting people like me. And yes, I have had an experience before where, I was at a Pride event and the Proud Boys decided to show up, but so did the Socialist Rifle Association. And the fact that they were there with their guns was what kept me from getting my ass kicked. So I feel like, if we could turn back time, if we could change the way that our country was formed, it'd be nice to like not have as many guns. But doing it now, basically police reform has got to be our priority. I think we have to do police reform before we can meaningfully address anything to do with the guns. So that's, my take on it.
Okay, we're going to throw it over to Trihex.
Yeah, so the question posed here is, are we for federal gun control, right? And I have a lot more to say. I'll answer that question directly first here. Yes, because ultimately, if we leave it to only states to solve the situation, if we're even admitting here there's a problem with mass shootings, the problem here becomes the fact that you have like another Chicago or Illinois 2.0 problem where like some states, typically blue-leaning states, will go a lot more hard on gun regulation, making things stricter, having longer background check periods and whatnot here. And then comparatively, the lure of having a more relaxed gun economy will lead to sales, spiking in neighboring states anyway. So it makes the whole thing kind of redundant. You need a universal agreed way to tackle that, to not have the Chicago 2.0 problem reoccur again here. But if I can go further in on that, aside from that particular question, ultimately about gun regulation, yeah, America has a huge gun fetishization problem. We already kind of alluded that from earlier. People were saying this beforehand here. We have more guns than people. We already have plenty of. I'll just going to rapid drop some fast facts for you here. Obviously, states that have more guns tend to have more gun violence, more gun deaths. We've had. If we're going to cherry pick one of the worst examples here, we can look at Sandy Hook, which happened in December 2012. In which case, since then we've had 2,000 plus mass shootings. Mass shootings being, the gun violence where 4 more people were involved. And we've had 2,000 plus of those since. I agree, it's a huge problem. We need to clearly get that under control here. That's like not good at all under any condition, no matter how much of an advocate you are for guns. The gun violence and the gun deaths are out of control here. They're insane. I recall a stat here that USA is home to almost 2/3 of the world's gun violence. It's abysmal across any metric here. And there's plenty of like false narrative spun from like either fear mongering that comes into play here, whether you can look at NRA lobbying or just gun advocate lobbying altogether here, whether you want to say that more guns would make things more safer, or having relaxed regulations so you can have more extreme concealed weapon permits be able to be acquired easier, or just general scare tactics meant to just give a short-term boost of sales for these gun manufacturers that comes into play as well here. And ultimately, what I'd like to see happen here, if we're going to get back on policy here, is obviously, as someone in Louisiana, I can tell you a little bit more about that. But gun show loopholes got to get close, where they're able to still dodge background checks here. Got to have consistent background checks in the first place. And there's a lot more we can go into from that if you want to get into more of the specific policy stuff here. there was some stuff that I heavily disagree with Biden on comparatively. If we go back to like things that Joe Biden has said that he will do in his administration back when he was running for the Democratic primary. But that's if we want to get into more policy specific stuff there. I'll just conclude here that, yeah, I'm for federal regulation. I think states is going to ultimately just undermine everything and have an inconsistent shit show of enforcement, kind of like how we have with COVID at this point. And I like to see it at minimum, background checks can be consistent, and honestly address and admit here that we have a mass shooting and gun violence problem, period. And I conclude.
Okay, next is going to be Phil.
Well. You need 5 wells for a truly dramatic introduction here, folks. I'm very glad to be addressing this particular topic because it's one that is very close to my heart. I am somebody that I'm very proud to live in a nation that allows its citizens the greatest possible chance and rights of self-defense of any nation on earth. And so to that is a good thing, objectively and measurably. Rights are the necessary conditions of one's proper existence, and every single one of us have a right to repel threats against ourselves and our loved ones. So I do actually think this is going to be a very interesting debate to have, so long as we can avoid one thing that normally comes in the gun control debate, and it's both sides trying to claim that they have some sort of monopoly on care, or they have some sort of monopoly, like, because you'll have the, well, you want people to die. No. You see, you want people to die. No. You see, you want more people to die. If we can avoid that, because we all want a better world, we're all looking for a way to try and improve our situation, that's where we can actually get somewhere. Because like Kay said, those are the kind of things that make this debate somewhat irretractable. Now, in regards to HR 127 that's being proposed, and I believe, oh goodness, I can't remember who brought it up, but when I was looking over it, it really just kind of looks like we want to punish gun owners for owning guns. That's really what it kind of broke down to. We want to register your weapons. Let's be frank, folks. The government only wants you to register things. They might need to know where it is later. There's really only one purpose for a registration for such a personal object like that. Now, in terms of 2020, we actually added 8 million new gun owners to the United States. So those are people that, in the year 2020 especially, we all kind of learned we might be on our own. So that was when a lot of folks decided, I'm going to take my personal safety into my own hands, and God bless them. And I think something to keep in mind, if we do have a registry here, we've got over 300 to 400 million guns, depending. Take your pick, pick what number, but let's go with the most conservative number of 300 million guns. We've got over 300 million guns, and that's not even including ones that are still in operation from the Civil War on, so we probably got a significant amount more. And they're wanting people to register them. Now, curious, does anybody know how many bump stocks got registered when those got banned? That's kind of what I'm getting at here, is a lot of Americans, are going to decide, I think peaceful non-compliance is actually a fairly valid form of civil disobedience. So we'll see what happens with that, folks. But really, in regards to gun control, the fact that it's not popular and the fact that people have lost elections based on their stance shows that it's not really as popular as people would like you to think it is. And we'll see what the ultimate, how this HR 127 ultimately shakes out. I don't think it's going to make its way through. If it did, we're going to see what the Supreme Court has to say about the Second Amendment here in a couple of years, won't we, folks? Been the first time we've had an actually favorable Second Amendment Supreme Court. So with all that being said, folks, I am very much looking forward to this discussion on Second Amendment rights in America, and will we have greater gun control in this nation? So with that, because I haven't been elected to Congress yet, but give it time. I yield back the balance of my time.
Wonderful. You over withdrew. Okay, so we're gonna go now on to the open discussion. I need to use the bathroom desperately, so for the first 1 minute, don't kill each other. Can you all promise me that?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
We'll try.
Okay. I'll be right back.
I'd like
Have rabble, 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 rabble.
Right.
Well-
So let me ask. I just want to ask this question. Right. It seemed like everybody was pretty much for some type of federal legislation, except for Phil and myself. Is that fair?
Be open
Or
to
are
it.
you-
What I want to see passed, I doubt you would have too much objection to.
Okay, so I'm for zero federal, right? So
What would
that's
you
where
like
I'm
to see
at.
passed?
I get it. I get
Okay.
it.
So
What
I
would you
guess
like to
I'm
see
just
passed? I'm just curious.
I'm sorry.
I
what?
mean,
What would you like to see passed, sir? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah, okay. So specifically, this is a question of competence. We're really talking about access to firearms versus like what kind of people like own firearms. I think any God-fearing, gun-loving, bacon-eating fucking American wants the American population to actually know how to use guns. Toddlers get killed, kids get killed. These things are stolen from houses. They're stolen from cars. The gun show loophole, I hate to say, is kind of a red herring because basically, like all the guns that are used in homicides are not bought at a gun show. They're burglarized from people's cars and houses. So educating the population, whether it's at the high school level or when they go to purchase a firearm, about safe storage, potential theft, burglary, the four safety rules, all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that is necessary to prevent people from owning guns, but that education needs to be, if we're going to have guns, the people who own those guns need to be educated. And that's what I would like to encourage societally.
One
Wait,
thing
I don't
I'd
know if I
like
agree
to
with that being
say
a red
just-
herring though. Like, but just
Well,
because
it is.
there's
The
a lot of
criminal's
gun violence
favorite
happening
gun
from-
is the one you leave in your car. That's the criminal's favorite gun. Whatever gun is left in your car, that's the one the criminal loves. So he's got a very good point there. But I will say, in counter to the idea of safe storage, is gun owners of America, if you let the anti-gunners into your house to decide if your storage is up to their standards, you're in for a world of trouble. So
Well,
now,
let me-
the idea-
let me-
Hippy,
that just
wait,
sounds
wait,
like-
Hippy,
wait,
you're
wait,
in
wait,
your
wait,
hole for exercising your right.
Okay, Phil, you weren't here for that. When I talk, no one talks. Just want to throw that out there right now. So, once again, now when you all talk at the same time, you think it would be 8 times more information. It's actually 0 information because once again, nobody can hear you when you all talk at the same time. Okay, so I see that Connor is raising their hand, but I also heard Trihex got interrupted earlier when he was trying to say something. So would you like to clarify what you're trying to say, Trihex?
Oh, well, so Connor seems opposed to, well, he dubbed that the gun show loophole is a red herring and shouldn't even be entertained to close that loophole because the statistic that like what were you saying, that gun violence happens through illegally obtained firearms anyway, right? Is that what you were alluding to, Connor?
Yeah. Let me know whether or not do I have like a minute to address 2 points, your point and KOE's
Sure, you
point.
can go. It's fine.
Okay,
Yeah, sure,
thanks.
go ahead.
Okay, all right. So yeah, all right. Not trying to be mean, but
Oh, maybe it's all up.
okay, cool. So yeah, so basically, when it comes to the gun show loophole, when it comes to mass shootings, gun show loophole, the guns bought at gun shows are not the ones that are being used in homicides. Additionally, if you're talking about like, gang violence, drug violence, domestic violence, all that kind of stuff, that shit's not being bought at a gun show loophole. So closing there's a form that you have to fill out.
What is this gun show loophole?
I'm almost
Lay it
done
out for me.
Well, I don't yield. So basically, if you go to a gun show, private dealers do not have to disclose the purchase or sale of their firearms to another fucking person. They don't have to do a background check. They can just do a private person-to-person sale. So that's the issue. But if you were to implement or impose a mandatory background check and a mandatory bill of sale, effectively what you're doing is you're generating a 4473. That's the background check form for purchasing a firearm. 4473s do get filed with the ATF. You've created a de facto registration. So basically, people should be able to transfer private firearms between each other without any kind of government intervention or background check, because it shouldn't be registered what firearms are going where. And then I can expand upon this point later, but I just want to address the safe storage argument by KOE before I shut up.
I didn't hear a gun show loophole. What I heard was you specifically say that they were private sales.
I don't yield.
Okay.
Okay.
Felt like you were done.
Okay, give
I
me
need 30 seconds.
Yeah,
I need
you
30
can
seconds.
continue. You can continue.
Okay. So KOE, you were talking about safe storage and how you don't want it to be legislated because you don't want the federal government dictating what people do with safe storage. I don't give a fuck what you do with your guns inside your own house. Leave it out by your fucking toddler. But what I'm okay with is if your fucking toddler gets killed by a gun that you fucking left out, you're criminally charged. If a gun is stolen from your house because it was improperly stored and then it's used in a fucking crime, let's say that the freak accident happens, a burglar steals your gun that's improperly secured and then is used in a fucking mass shooting, then you're fucking civilly liable for part of the fucking crimes that are committed with the firearm that you allowed to be stolen. I yield.
Yeah,
Can I respond to that?
Sure,
Yeah,
but DemonMama has risen their hand. And Trihex, did you want to also respond to that?
Wow.
Yeah, I'll let DemonMama go first before
Okay.
I.
Yeah. So there's just there's a lot here. I'm kind of neutral on the questions of gun shows. Personally, I think there's a lot of problems with gun shows on a cultural level, having gone to many of them over time. Particularly that a lot of gun shows also tend to have a whole bunch of stands selling Confederate flags and Nazi flags and all kinds of stuff like that. And I think that's an issue with the culture as a whole that surrounds gun culture in America. That there's this idea that it's going to be that buying guns is about prepping for some sort of coming civil war, which is I find really, really fucking concerning. But I think there's another thing that needs to be addressed, which is the fact that a lot of gun violence in America is self-inflicted, and it's a lot of men who die from this because they tend to choose more lethal methods. There is evidence shown that safe storage does reduce the likelihood of self-harm, if from family members or from the owner themselves. And I think that's something that a lot of gun owners need to pay attention to. And this is something that I talk about, again, as someone who supports building a healthier gun culture in America, because I do support independent gun ownership. I think that we need to be really frank and honest about the fact that a lot of people kill themselves with guns that are not properly secured. And the fact that the sort of fantasy of like the castle doctrine, like whipping out your gun and blowing away a burglar that's in your house, just doesn't really happen all that frequently. Most of the time, people can't get to their guns even when they're not properly secured, and they're not really necessarily likely to use them. Or if they're in like an apartment, they'll blast through the floor and hit somebody else or endanger somebody else's lives. To me, the value in gun ownership is in its collective value. That places that have a healthy gun culture and regular gun ownership are much less likely to be imposed upon by white nationalist gangs, by extremely unjust government action, because there's a knowledge that these people are legally armed and can legally protect themselves. The fantasy of like, again, the sort of hero whipping out the gun and blowing away the invader is just not really there. And the price that we're paying as a country by not addressing this issue is that a lot of people, a lot of young men, are killing themselves with guns that are not properly secured. And I think that's a really big tragedy that a lot of people overlook, and that I don't think it necessarily needs to be a particularly polarizing issue. I think both right-wingers and left-wingers who support gun rights should be able to say, yeah, this is actually a big problem. We probably should try to look into a way to change this. And a lot of that might come from encouraging much healthier storage of weapons.
Okay. Can I ask you, no comment, did you raise your hand earlier, or did I miss that?
No, that was actually right next to me, or I don't know if she's right next to me.
Sorry, I just saw some comments from chat.
I think it was K. It was K.
Okay. So I believe it was going to be Trihex, then Phil, then it's going to be K after that. Okay, just going from the order they raised their hand. Okay, so Try, you're first.
Okay. So Connor, yeah, I'm not here to like let's bring it back a little bit here, because like my whole thing is I'm not here to like rain on the parade of like having like gun owners locked down and be completely whatever, like demoralized with their gun freedom or whatever. Really what I'm getting at here is that like it's the gun violence, the excessive amount of it that happens in America, the excessive amount of like the fact that we've had what is the rate here? We've had like I think it's 12 persons die from gun violence per 100,000 capita in USA, and it's increased from 10 to almost 12 in the last 10 years or something like that. But regardless, the point here is that there is a saturation of gun violence, and that is the issue to me. The issue isn't how relaxed gun handling is or how extreme all that is. It's the problem is the consequence of the gun violence. So with that in mind, whenever you're bringing up things like that, the gun show loophole or whatever you want to call it here is ultimately skipping the background check or skipping the logging of where guns go. I have to ask here, well, then what's the point of the formal background check at a gun store compared to the gun show? Then isn't that just belittling the whole thing here? Wouldn't anyone who wants to do anything just go for the exploit anyway at the gun show comparatively? Now, I don't know if you want to equate here the gun show to like a private sale or not there.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. So basically, the American per capita homicide rate as it stands right now is like 5 per 100,000. Europe or Western Europe by comparison is around 2 per 100,000 or 1.5 to 1.7 per 100,000. And we're not the most violent country on the planet. Some countries have a fucking 22 or 50 per 100,000 fucking homicide rate, like fucking Nicaragua or Mexico or a whole bunch of other different countries. So it's not necessarily the guns that are driving the homicide rate. And by comparison, we are actually worse than developed countries. That is the barometer by which we are being measured, is specifically developed countries that often have stricter gun control. So specifically, and also on top of that, this is like a cultural and a criminological thing. So back in the 1960s, our homicide rate was around 5 per 100,000, and that was the standard back then. It actually almost doubled by like 1992 to 1994 to around 10 to 12 per 100,000, and we've effectively cut that in half in the past 20 to 30 years. We're back down to 5 per 100,000 through potentially aggressive policing that we all want to reform. Hold on, I'm almost done. So the point being that there's a whole bunch of infinitely stronger. So I have concerns about registration because historically registration has led to confiscation. The 4473 and universal application of 4473 forms to gun sales would be de facto registration, whether you like it or not. And then basically there's so many other things that I can do, or that we could do, and that the left, I think, has much stronger arguments for, like fixing broken families, fixing broken communities, basically, fixing systemic racism, fixing income inequality, all of these things that improve the lives of average material citizens. It would basically reduce the homicide rate, maybe not to the European levels, but just to give you an idea, the homicide rate in the Black community specifically is 22 per 100,000. It's fucking brutal. So there's obviously, if you look at the white per capita homicide rate and you look at the Black per capita homicide rate, there's obviously something going on in these communities that's different, and we should address that difference to reduce homicides.
Very interesting.
Phil, you are next, and then it's going to be Kay.
All right, sweet. Very interesting take there, and looking forward to further analysis on that. But I wanted to get a little deeper into something you were saying when it came to in regards to safe storage, whether you're talking about if a child were to get your gun or if it were to be stolen. Two entirely different things, in my opinion. Now, if a child were to get a gun to get to where you want to go, that would just require a very small tweak in our criminal negligence laws. And I think we could actually get a lot closer to where you're wanting to go in that without having to do some sort of large sweeping gun control. In regards to stolen firearms, boy, howdy. Like, somebody's a victim of a crime, theft, and now you want to make them responsible for what somebody does with that. I'm sorry, we don't make people responsible for the crimes of other people. So there's really, there's no verbal jujitsu that you're going to get me to say, yes, I want people who are the victims of crimes to be responsible for what the people who perpetrated those crimes against them did afterwards. I'm sorry, there's just no way you're going to get there. That's a perversion of justice by any measure. I'm sorry.
Interjection.
No.
Can I go? Okay, I'll be very brief for everybody else's fucking sake of time, okay? I didn't say criminally, I said civilly. So basically, and specifically, I'm talking about negligence. So for instance, if I leave a firearm inside a McDonald's bathroom and a toddler walks into that bathroom and shoots themselves with my gun, then I am going to be charged with negligence. That's what I mean. So if a burglar breaks into your house, steals your gun, and commits a crime 6 months later, I don't give a fuck. That's not your fault. But we have to assign a certain rights. This is what I'm pissed off, and then I'll shut the fuck up. I am perfectly fine with rights. I also want to talk about responsibilities. And I want the left and the right to start talking about social responsibilities that come with our rights.
Right. Okay. So I've listened to
One moment
everybody in the
before
room.
you say something, CTV. Trihex, that was directed at you originally. So did you want to respond to that? Or you can just pass it if you don't.
Well, I feel like I kind of like I lost what I was gonna say initially because we like kind of went because like a lot of it was just at me, and then I didn't write down specifically what I wanted to get into there, other than like I don't know. Yeah, I largely still disagree with a lot of what you're saying, but that's okay though. I'll better refine myself whenever we get back to me and you talking more, Connor.
Okay.
I'll let CTV go.
Before CTV goes though, Kay did raise their hand, and then CTV, then Hutch. I'll put CTV between it. We'll make a sandwich. Kay, you're next.
Yeah, I kind of want to echo what Connor was saying about more of this being like a responsibility discussion, because I see it being a very, very slippery slope if we're going to try to legislate the idea of what is considered safely putting your firearm away or safely keeping it, because there are issues along those lines, being that I have seen situations specifically with domestic violence cases where women have gone to sleep with their guns underneath their pillows because they're terrified. They're half awake throughout the night waiting for their abusive partner to break into their house, and they live in this constant fear. So for us to try to legislate that you have to have your gun stored in a safe, a specific distance away, a specific height, so that your children cannot get to it, I think we kind of get into a gray area where it comes to every case is different, every situation is different, and everybody has a firearm for different reasons. So I think that this does need to be more of a discussion about responsibility and education on how to be responsible when owning a firearm in your home, particularly whenever you do have small children or people that struggle from severe mental illness that aren't capable of understanding safety guidelines with firearms.
5 seconds. Everybody who listened to that, Google stop box. If you have a firearm inside your home, if you have children or mentally unstable people, look at stop box. It's very cheap, and it's a good product.
Okay.
Maureen, you know that was more than 5 seconds.
Sorry.
Oh.
All right.
That's why I wasn't on submarines like you. That takes a lot of math to be in a submarine.
It does, actually. Yeah, like the fact
Well, I meant that unironically.
For every 100 feet you go down, it's 44 pounds per square inch of pressure, right? So, been in a pretty pressure-infied. I just made up a word. All right, so I listen to everybody, and everybody seems to be for some type of federal legislation, which lets me kind of know that I am not in the room with principled people, right? For sure. Because,
of course,
I mean, if we understand this, right, then what we need to understand first is that the Second Amendment is there, and it has the language, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Right now, you take that one idea, and then you read every fucking thing before that where it lays out what the framework of the federal government is. Right? So either A, you're an American and you believe in the Constitution, right? And the fact that the federal government is the one that should not be making any laws with regard to weapons, because why? They shall not be infringed upon, right? So if you all of these arguments are great arguments, right? For you to take to your state government, right? And convince the people inside your state that that's what needs to happen. But if they don't go crying to the fucking federal government, because the reality is that in DC versus Heller, right, the Supreme Court said, hey, guess what? So how's it probably going to be viewed? In the aspect that the federal government is the one that should not be making weapons laws. Leave that up to the states.
Okay.
Matter of fact, there's a whole lot of issues
Okay.
that you should be leaving at the state level and not bringing to the federal level. This shows a gross misunderstanding of the actual fucking form of government and definitely in need of civics education, right? So that's kind of where we're at with it. I haven't heard any reason at all for the federal government to be getting involved.
Hey, let's not suck the
I can tell you
goes to
one.
the dick of the founding fathers too hard, CTV.
Yeah, I can give you
Dick
some.
I want. Don't
Oh, go ahead.
shame me, no comment, chick.
You can have all
Wait,
the dicks
was it-
you want, Connor,
was
yes.
Thank you.
And the crush continues.
Jesus Christ.
Wait, was
Okay,
it
If
my-
you'd
was it
like
my-
to
back-
go,
Okay. So Okay,
gonna
so we're
start
going
charging
back.
for this
We're
much
going.
attention.
We're going back to the list. I don't know who rose. If
It was me.
Yeah, I know you're next, Hutch, but I'm trying to figure out. Chat, if you could help me, who rose the hand first? Was it DemonMama or Try? Hutch, you're next.
So I'm glad you brought up DC versus Heller, because Scalia in that opinion wrote, nothing in our opinion should be taken to cast doubt on longstanding prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons and the mentally ill, or laws forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive places such as schools, government buildings, or laws imposing conditions and qualifications on the commercial sale of arms. Also, just to like hit on the wording of the Second Amendment, it's so bad and confusing. It doesn't make any fucking sense. A well-regulated, like you talk about shall not be infringed. The fucking amendment starts with a well-regulated militia. Now we can quibble about what that means. And Scalia himself said that.
Did you read any of the previous parts of the Constitution? It pretty much lays out the idea.
So
there for
let me
you,
just
bro.
lay it out for you. A well-regulated militia, comma, being necessary for the security of a free state, comma, the right to keep and bear arms.
Semicolon.
It doesn't matter. The sentence doesn't make any sense. It's
literally
super
how
fucking
English
confusing.
works. Literally how English works,
The
man. I didn't
amendment
make up
is
the fucking language. I was born here in 1983. I showed up. People taught me the language. I started learning how it fucking worked.
Anyways. It's an incredibly confusing amendment, and obviously it's like very much open to interpretation. But I just wanted to like clarify your position, CTV, because you said there should be no federal legislation whatsoever to infringe on anyone's right to bear. Do you think that the federal government should be able to tell people you can't own a nuclear weapon? I just want to test like how much.
Oh, see, I'm glad you bring up nuclear arms. I'm so glad that you do, because I feel like it was irresponsible of the government post-World War II at the discovery of the atomic age.
No, we're getting off the rails here.
Are you going to ask the question? Oh, you asked the question. Do you want the fucking answer, or do you just want to be screamed at?
But answer the question, though. Do you think
I'm trying to answer the question. Are you going to listen?
Do you think that the federal government should prohibit individuals
I'm redressing the question. I'm saying the question so that the answer... Jesus Christ. Okay, so...
Salad dressing.
All right, so with regard to nuclear weapons, I'm glad you asked. At the discovery of the atomic age, I really feel like that was very specifically one instance that our founders would not have been able to see. And when the atomic age was discovered, right? Because it was already here, we just didn't know that it was. We just had to discover it, right? That's how these things work. So once we discovered it, the Constitution should have amended to include that the federal government had the power when it came to controlling atomic energy, right? Be it for nuclear power plants or for nuclear weapons, right?
Okay.
That's where the Constitution needed to be amended for this thing that is completely brand new, and there was no fucking way that they would have been able to see it. Now, you can argue every other point, but they would have been able to see, like, advanced ships. They would have been able to see guns. They would have been able to see a lot of these other different guns that were out there available. They would have been able to see all that. But with regard to nuclear energy, the Constitution should have been amended.
No, I'm talking about nuclear weapons. I mean, like, forget about nuclear weapons. What about a Gatling gun, a minigun or something like that, right? Like, those didn't exist at the time of the founding fathers.
There was the puckle gun. Yes, there was. Matter of fact, we already had that.
Gatling,
before.
a minigun? A minigun
I
was
said puckle gun, yeah.
on the level that we have now? Or is that what you... Can you explain that to me? Like,
it's rudimentary technology.
Going into a fight with one of those against modern weaponry, be honest.
So that's my point. Are you saying that a modern Gatling gun could compete with the sort of weapon that you're describing from 1776? Or
whether it can compete with it doesn't matter. It's still rudimentary technology that was just advanced. It's still the same technology.
Okay,
wait.
Okay,
I want to get to.
Give me a second. Okay.
Come on. Let me hop in here, please.
Yeah. Okay. Hutch. Well, finish your last point, and most of the chat said it was Try, so that it's Try the Demon. So it's gonna be Hutch finished and Try.
So if CTV is agreeing that the Constitution should have been amended and updated, which is a position that I completely agree with you on, then are you not arguing that the federal government has a right to determine like what sort of firearm? Are you not arguing that the federal government has a responsibility to its citizens to regulate firearms at a federal level?
I think the citizens have a responsibility to bring it before the federal government and have the Constitution amended, because that's literally how this whole system works. It's controlled by the people.
That's gun control. That's a form of gun control. If the federal government tells you can't own a nuclear weapon,
are you not listening?
I'm
listening.
If you don't
want to start with an amendment to the Constitution, which is exactly what you would need in order to change the way the framework is written now, right? If you're not talking about doing that thing, right? Then You're not talking about anything because reality is the way the law is written, there is no room for federal legislation when it comes to firearms. None.
Okay. But do you not understand what I'm saying though? You are arguing that federal gun control is justified. If you're saying that we should update or we should
gun control is not nuclear control.
Arms control, whatever you want to say. I don't know how to like phrase this in a way that's going to
very specific technology that was discovered, right?
RPGs.
The fucking splitting
RPGs.
That's not the splitting of an atom, is it?
RPGs.
Right, like we literally have provisions in the Constitution that allow us to fucking make room for the sciences, right, and the arts. So this is one of those things that should have been amended then at the discovery of the atomic age.
This is what the fuck I'm talking about when I say that, like, when we get into these gun control conversations, this reminds me of the conversation we just had a little bit ago about discrimination versus judgment. This is just completely pointless, and you just derail the conversation, and you end up
right because I'm literally pointing out science to you, and it's incapable of being understood. I understand.
Well, okay, so we're gonna go over to Trihex now, and then it's going to go Demon, Phil, then Connor.
All right, so CCV. So you're a diehard constitutionalist, but you're really an advocate for verbatim how things are stated in the Second Amendment, which you are agreeing is an amendment to the Constitution. So therefore, it was an extension that was added after the Constitution was initially drafted. So then you probably would be open to more amendments that happen in the future, would you not? If there was a calling for either like a lapse in specificity or just like a need to be addressed in situation right here, because we're getting like, you know, a very antiquated amendment interpreted in the best of faith catering to whatever you want done. Like you have to give us something here. Obviously, Second Amendment was drafted in relation to weapons at that time, mainly muskets, which take minutes to load and are incredibly inaccurate and are nowhere near comparable to modern weaponry. You got to give me something here, dude. Are you just like in denial?
I'll address this, right? So
Thomas Jefferson's favorite gun had a 22 round capacity.
Right. So we've had 16 amendments that got added since the 10th Amendment, right? 16 amendments have been added, right? And then we also looked at Article 5, where it spells out specifically how you might go about amending part of this Constitution, right? So since we understand what needs to happen as far as to be able to get to that point, that's what you would need to do if you were a principled person when it came to getting anything done with regard to federal legislation, is you would need to have the Constitution amended. And this is where a big fucking problem comes in between the left and the right, because you're just like, hey, over here on the left, we'll say that we're for guns, right? But then we're like, well, we want the federal government involved in this area. Then you're not really for the Constitution or the Second Amendment or for guns, because you don't want to protect the individual's right to be able to protect themselves from not just government, right? But some asshole trying to break in your house, or you're going through a walk in the fucking woods and a bear comes out of fucking nowhere, right? So there's three instances right there where you would want the ability to have a weapon, right? And the principled stance from the writing of the Constitution and the way that it's also being explained in the Federalist Papers is that it shall not be infringed, and any legislation that you would want needs to be done at the state level.
I feel like you're entertaining an incredibly slippery slope because you're terrified that if anything happens on gun regulation or gun safety, that you're going to have like your entire gun ownership revoked entirely here. Like the idea here that like anything's going to happen to the point you have an insane gun culture where like Beto O'Rourke got obliterated because he said, we're gonna do gun buybacks. Vaguely, didn't even say definitively after that horrible shooting happened in Texas back in 2018 or whatever year it was. Like, dog, you're not gonna. I hate that you're entertaining such an extreme slippery slope, and like you're not even entertaining the reality that we have like a mega gun violence problem. That's not bothering you?
What I'm really trying to do is to point you in the direction where you can be able to enact the kind of good that you would want, which is at your state legislature, not the federal government.
Okay, let's go that way.
Until the Constitution has been amended.
Okay. Oh my God, Dylan, please.
Yeah, okay.
Like I haven't even got to finish my point at all once yet. It comes in every time.
You get an unrestricted go, and then we got to move it over to.
All I want to say here is that you still have not actually addressed here your opposition to like a federal overreach of any kind or any kind of policy there, because I've already brought up
policies.
No,
you are talking over me. You gotta let me finish, dude. Chicago 2.0. If we say leave it up to states here, what will happen? Blue state is going to go for the policy. Red state, neighboring state will not. And you're going to have all the guns coming from that state. It's going to be the same shit as Chicago was in the first place here. it won't actually solve the problem. You're throwing me a technicality, doesn't solve the problem for admitting that gun violence is still an issue. It's like having the COVID thing right now. If a blue state has like LA has like a hardcore lockdown to prevent COVID spread, and then Arkansas doesn't really give a shit, what's the point anyway? Right? We're not regulating where fucking people travel between Arkansas and Los Angeles here, so it's the same fucking difference. So like you gotta like address the act. Don't tell me the technicality of what you want to do with states' rights. Tell me how you actually want to address the substance of the problem of gun violence in America.
I'm calling it a principle, not a technicality.
Okay, we're moving over to DemonMama.
Okay. Yeah, there's like a lot of stuff going on in this conversation, but I think the position of like constitutional like originalism or whatever is totally bunk. The Constitution has been amended many times. Yes, it should not be easy necessarily to amend the Constitution, but it should be possible. I think everyone would agree with this. Anybody who doesn't is contesting to civil rights in America. And basically many major improvements to our country. So that's just a very silly, the idea that like believing that we can amend the Constitution is like unprincipled is silly. But secondly, I really like the fact that Trihex brought up issues of red states and blue states. We value and we should value the freedom of movement across the states very highly. But that introduces some problems. For example, if, say, I don't know, Texas, bordering a whole bunch of other states, decides to legalize, I don't know, RPGs, like was said, or huge machine guns or whatever, then you have a problem because somebody could easily take that to the neighboring state and blow the shit out of somebody, and they wouldn't even be able to defend themselves with the guns they have there. So there are issues where we need to be able to address the fact that, like, okay, clearly there has been a considerable amount of technological advancement from the beginning. Clearly, the Second Amendment isn't perfectly clear. A lot of people have interpreted it differently over time. And I think that we can come to a recognition that people have a right to be able to move between the states freely and also be safe existing in their state and not have to worry about a mob of people with fucking truck-mounted miniguns rolling into their state, blowing them up, and then driving back. Like, it's ridiculous. But this is a serious risk, especially as we see this very last summer an issue of someone illegally transporting a firearm while underage across state lines and killing people. And I'm not going to get into the entire dialogue over that, but nonetheless, this example is not exactly far-fetched. In fact, we've had this many times in our history. So we have to be able to acknowledge that that this is not like some frivolous concern, nor is it representative of some like lack of principles to say, hey, we might need to clarify some things in our Constitution. I think at the end of the day, it's always interesting to find out what people believe the purpose of the Second Amendment actually is. In my opinion, the Second Amendment has, despite the fact that I always support independent gun ownership, that it is clear that the Second Amendment was designed to be able to allow communities to defend themselves in a much different time that we do not live in anymore. And the goal, then, we should focus on being able to equip communities to defend themselves reasonably. And that does not mean allowing people completely unrestricted ownership of all firearms into the future. I mean, what, are we going to be having the same debate when fucking laser guns exist, when plasma rifles exist, and then we're going to have people being able to melt down an entire house with a single shot? This is ridiculous. Like, obviously, we have to be able to evolve and adjust with changing technology. And let's be real. The purpose of gun control, I know there's some people who think, oh, you need to be able to resist the government. Unless you're literally talking about owning tanks and drones, you're not going to be able to defend yourself against the government.
So give me a moment here. Give me a moment here.
No, it's not.
Okay, so there's a lot of points being made here. There's a lot of dialogue being made. Would it be cool if we moved it on a little bit? Okay, just give me a moment
Can I
here.
just say my
give me 1 second. Give me a moment. Okay, so I thought it was clear about this. When I talk, no one else does. I have the list. I know you're thinking like, I know I'm next. I know I wrote your name down. When people raise their hand, I write it down. So I just wanted to say quickly that I think it'd be cool if we had a quick question to cool things down. Raise your hand if you like mint chocolate chip ice cream. Raise it.
Boo.
The amount of disrespect from Trihex here to not raise his hand on the best ice cream flavor is absolutely fucking disgusting. Actually, from it, disgusting conduct from Trihex. This is more disrespectful if you just didn't show up. Honestly, horrible.
Mint ice cream, sin. Mint brownies, a crime.
I'm
Travesty.
sorry
Why
that
would
I
you
have
ruin
a
brownies?
10-minute
Mint-
mute.
Why do I want?
Oh!
Why would I want toothpaste as a flavor for my food?
I'm sorry.
No,
Wait. You know the most
Garbage.
popular gum flavor is mint, and it's for a reason because some people like to have delicate. And
Man, that is a lot of defective tongues, right? That's
refined
crazy. Is that
palates.
the Rona spreading right there? I don't know what's going on there, dude.
You think? You mean? I feel like this is kind of like a flat earther mentality. You know what I mean? Like what I say by that is when you're the person like, oh, everybody else is the actual sheeple. I'm not the nutter one. They're the nutter one. When they're actually the people who are the normal ones with refined palates. Just because you can't taste anything, Trihex, doesn't mean you need to project that in front. You could have just pretended to like mint to be normal, to be an average, decent human being. You could have pretended.
Okay, now you're flavor shaming. That's fucked up.
I will shame. I will shame. Look, I'm pretty progressive,
Wow.
but I will be a hardcore reactionary on mint ice cream. Okay, if you don't like mint ice cream, you're just saying you don't have good taste generally.
You know what? To be fair, mint ice cream I could tolerate. It's really mint brownies I'm beefing on. If we're being honest here, that I don't buy with.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Okay.
So I'm Dylan Burns, and if you don't like mint ice cream, then fuck you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Allow me your short anecdote. One time, classroom, some teacher, I forget whatever it was, a teacher brought like brownies, and I was like, yo, I'm about to slam down 800 calories of brownies like real quick here. I bit into it thinking it was a wonderful, gooey, fudge-induced, fun time of sugar, sin, and butter and fat. I bite into it, mint, buzzkill.
So he's been traumatized. We need to respect that.
Have I ever had a mint brownie? I don't know. I mean, it sounds like a good idea.
Fair question here before we judge me. Have you had mint brownies before? Mint chocolate brownies?
I have not, but you were making these determinations about mint ice cream too, right?
No, that's fair. I'm admitting guilt of that, and I'm retracting. I could tolerate.
I'm the first debate champion. I just won. I won the belt. Now you have to defend it against me.
I said it's really mint. You're right. I'm projecting from my experience, my traumatization from mint chocolate brownies.
Oh wait, hold on, Dylan, hold on, wait. Gotta look. All right.
You're.
Is that supposed to be an easy clap?
What
was that?
I thought that was like
it's a belt, dude. Like Jesus Christ, how many of you motherfuckers watching WWE? That's the fucking dink. You know, the 3 count.
Tag
bell. Come on.
Match
Jesus Christ. Oh my
God. Okay. That's enough. Now we can get back into the heated discussion. Next, now I'm gonna do. I know, Tay, you had your hand raised, but we're going to go Phil, Connor, and then I want to see if we can ditch the notepad because we're kind of just working off the notepad for a second here. So let's see if we can go back to open discussion. Kay, I said I saw your hand.
I just, really quick, if I can just say what I need to say, because I actually have to go because I have to get my husband up for work in a couple hours and I need to sleep. So I'm just going to, if I can just say like this last piece, it kind of give my closing statement, and then I'm actually going to have to dip.
Okay.
Rock and roll.
First of all, like, I've loved the discussion, guys. I thought it was great, and I respect each and every one of you and all of your opinions. And I thank you, Dylan, for having me on. I really I had a great time discussing all these different issues, and I hope that I can come back in the future. And with that, I'm gonna go because I have to get my husband up in like 2.5 hours, and I haven't slept in like 12. So I will see you guys later.
Nice to meet you.
Peace.
Good luck.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna.
We're 8.
Okay, so now it's Phil and Connor. Then we're gonna get off the notepad, hopefully, and probably we're actually gonna move on to the last topic.
I can do mine as closing if you want.
right.
Sure, Phil.
Now, in regards to can your firearms have any sort of effect against military hardware, I believe that was DemonMama that was making that argument. You know, if that was the case, then they wouldn't even bother to issue rifles to soldiers in a battlefield. For the last 10 years, our soldiers in battle have been going up against, in Afghanistan, folks with little surplus Russian equipment and rusty Kalashnikov rifles. Yet they've still been able to cause quite a problem for just about every empire that's ever gone there. So the idea that they have no effect at all is, that's just not analyzing history. Now, in regards to also, you said we've never amended. It's not right to say we shouldn't amend the Constitution. We have amended the Constitution several times and to do good things. But what we're discussing here in this instance would be something unique to anything ever in American history, and a truly dangerous precedent at that. For the first time, we would be amending the American Constitution to take rights away from Americans. This has never happened before in our history, and this would be setting a very dangerous precedent indeed. And so I just cannot get behind that. And two last thoughts I just wanted to say. I believe it was Trihex was saying that the founding fathers didn't know about the kind of weapons we have now. But we'll get there. Yes, actually, when we ended Prohibition, well, it was a constitutional amendment just so we could get our liquor back. But so what I'm getting at here is it was actually Thomas Jefferson's favorite rifle was a 22-shot rifle. I believe it's called the Pendersoli or Pendersali rifle. You can, folks can look it up. And it was a 22-shot rifle that you just had to tip it back, hit a button, it would load another round, and it was actually pneumatically charged. And Thomas Jefferson loaned 2 of these rifles to the Lewis and Clark expedition because they actually used that to defend themselves when they were actually being under heavy assault. It was 2 people with these rifles up against 40 different people, and they were able to hold position. And then the last thing I'd like to say, a very interesting thing, we were talking about nuclear weapons. I just want you all to think about this and all realize this. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, we have lived under a very interesting reality. We have had privately held nuclear weapons since the fall. You can go to Vice News, where they actually do a story on privately bought nuclear warheads on the Bulgarian black market. At the time, about $5 million could get you a warhead with a blast radius of about 5 miles. And we have lived under this reality since the 90s. And you will notice the sky has not fallen upon our heads. So just something to keep in mind when people try to go to this extreme of the privately owned nuclear warhead argument, and you think you're arguing in the abstract. You're actually not. This is something that we've been living under since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And with all of that said, all you beautiful people, I yield back the balance of my time.
Got it.
Actually, going to ask. Can I ask CTV a question about, just to clarify? I'm not literally not trying to blow him up here on the nuclear question.
Sure, quick, but it's got to be like a minute.
Quickly, CTV. So, are you saying, and I'm just trying to clarify here, I'm genuinely curious, that constitutionally I have the right to build and maintain a nuclear ordinance, and that we need like a constitutional amendment to stop the Revolutionary Council of Catgirls from getting a hold of a nuke?
That is awesome.
Like, is this true? Like, do you think it's constitutionally, is he muted? Am I muted? Is everyone muted?
I hear you.
No, I hear you. I can hear you fine.
Hear you.
Did he hear me?
Don't hear critically thinking veteran.
I think he did, yeah.
I just want to know. I'm curious. I'm seriously curious.
I literally don't know what all of that after language was about.
You don't have to worry about that.
But in
part.
reality,
is it legal for me to build one?
Are you gonna wait for the answer, or do you just want to try to?
You're speaking very slow.
Right. So
do it.
So in reality, right, from a principle standpoint, there is no law against it.
Okay.
Okay. We're
going
going
to now.
Okay. Now it's closing statements. Can everybody please keep them short and sweet, because we only have an hour left and we haven't even touched minimum wage, which everybody will agree on. We're gonna go to Hutch.
Yeah, I just want to open by saying I appreciated Connor's point. I had to go to the bathroom a little bit when I came back. He was talking about how the problem is very multifaceted. It's not just an issue about how do we restrict gun ownership or what sort of guns should we restrict. You also have to address a lot of socioeconomic factors as well. And I think this is sort of a character of the left where, and maybe it's true for some people, but I think a lot of right-wingers think that people on the left, for the majority of the people on the left, just want to come in and take everybody's guns. But as far as I can tell, there's nobody on this panel that wants to make it so that nobody can own a gun, period. And if we're talking about the like CTV's position was that it shouldn't come from the federal government. It should only be the state that regulates what sort of firearms, or like whatever kind of firearm regulation should occur should only occur on the state level. Well, what would happen if Nevada decided tomorrow that you should be allowed to own an RPG, or actually you might be able to do that in Nevada. I don't know. If we were talking about like Utah or something like that. If touching on the point that DemonMama made, if you have certain states that allow extremely deadly weapons for personal use, what are the ramifications for that for neighboring states, for the rest of the country? It just seems kind of silly to me. But again, I just want to reiterate my point that I personally don't see a lot of hope for much progress on this issue being made, because again, this is not something that most voters prioritize above a lot of other issues that are on the table right now. And I think we can all agree that we want less gun violence. So I think that's kind of a cop-out answer. Bullshit.
Okay.
Whatever.
Let's make the next ones a lot quicker. No comment check.
Yeah, the problem for the libs out there is that, like, you know, they're a lot less, they think they're motivated on the gun issue, but they're a lot less motivated than the right wing. The right wing lives and breathes this issue. I don't anticipate us doing much progress, you know, towards that. And I would frankly say that, like, our attention would be better served addressing police reform before we can even like start to worry about that, because who's going to enforce the gun control? Who's going to do the confiscation? We don't want it to be racist cops. So let's take care of things in the priority order and not get ahead of ourselves. My spicy take.
Okay. We're going to get a replacement because we try to keep the balance of 4 lefties, 4 righties to make sure it's not unfair for anybody. So we're getting a replacement soon. Next is going to be CTV.
All right. So from a principle standpoint, like I said earlier, the Constitution should have been amended at the discovery of the atomic age, right? So after that, there's no legislation that can be or should be, from a principle standpoint, be put into place with regard to arms, because Second Amendment, right? The only way that can change is if you amend the Constitution, if you're principled, right? But if you're okay with partisan politics and only caring about your team, right, and not really giving a fuck about the document itself, then by all means, right, you can go advocate for whatever the fuck you want, right? Everybody can do that. But I would tell you that the best place for you to be doing those things is at the state level, or at your county level, or at your city level, because from all the socialist arguments that I've been hearing over the last few months, you want the control of things to be at the closest level possible to the community in which you're trying to enact some type of good on, right? So that means that you need the laws, and you need them to be understood to be from the individual standpoint, so that it brings it back closer in to the individual and the community that they're in, right? So having a government that would be literally 5 places away, right, in most cases from the individual, is a pretty far and away place for the type of control that anybody that would be advocating for gun control to be at, right? And notice how a couple of the lefties here have probably deafened their chat so that their chat doesn't have to hear the truth, right? So that's kind of where we're at with reality. And if you really want something good to happen with your community, advocate for it at your local level and your state level. Federal gun control is not something that you should be wanting from a principle standpoint, because you also would understand that there are a lot of issues across the several states, and they have a lot of different needs. So you want that to be closer to the individuals.
Okay. Now, going forward, everybody got only 30 seconds because we are now under an hour for the last topic. Okay. So,
man.
DemonMama, 30 seconds.
Yeah, really appreciate that Hutch brought back up the idea of states having a right to protect their own citizens. So I think that federal collaboration is necessary on many issues, and I think that guns are an important issue, especially in the modern age where you can cross state lines very quickly with a vehicle, which we regulate and license, and bring a gun there. Now, do I think that guns should be able to be owned? Absolutely. But we have a absolute epidemic of suicides in this country that does a lot of damage, and I do believe that a lot of that is because we have a rampant gun sales culture. We have no consistency across the states, and it clearly isn't working, and a lot of people are dying, so we should be safe and be smart. So that's all I got to say on this one.
Okay, perfect. Straight over to counterpoints. 30 seconds.
Okay, try to be brief. So an earlier point was that the Second Amendment language sucks ass. The Second Amendment is capable of being understood. Guncite.org, guncite.org has a whole bunch of different interpretations. We have a mega violence problem inside the United States. I disagree with that framing just because I think we have a violence problem compared to developed nations, but I think we're doing pretty well overall. I also think that we can improve. Constitutional originalism is bunk. I disagree. The reason why constitutional amendments shouldn't be repealed, the only time a constitutional amendment should be repealed is if the problem it was meant to address has disappeared. The balance of power between private citizens and the government has not disappeared. It should be remained. Final point, you can't defend yourself against the government. I have a video on my YouTube channel called Asymmetric Warfare Memes for YouTube Moderator and Tanky Teens. Go check it out. It's basically a 20-minute diatribe about the balance of power between private citizens and the government. Yield.
Okay. Now we're throwing it over to Trihex.
All right, I'll keep it short. Yeah, gun violence is a very gun violence and gun fetishization in American culture is definitely an issue. We need to definitely address that as soon as we can. With that in mind, rather than repeating stuff, I'll just go over like what I would advocate for here. Clearly, I would like to see the universal gun, background checks for gun purchases. I'd like to be able to see less exploitation of stolen and illegally obtained guns. However, we can address that as quickly and as effectively as possible. I would even argue we can make parallels here to like again how we regulate other things of mass killing potential, like vehicles. Maybe we should be reconsidering here the whole paradigm of like insurance regulation on gun ownership. Maybe we should be looking back into like the idea of curbing the culture by implementing some kind of exploring the idea of voluntary buyback programs for guns to be able to just lower the amount of gun saturation right now, because we're not going to be able to really solve this problem realistically within this century if we don't start doing something dramatic now. But again, this is like a much more bigger topic to get into later on here. So with that, I stop.
Okay. Throwing it over to Phil.
Well, folks, I'll keep it very short. Rights are the necessary conditions of one's proper existence. Nothing more, nothing less. You have the right to repel threats to yourself and those that you love and care about. Any state that would infringe upon this right is wrong. And so that's why I would implore you to oppose H.R. 127 or further gun control efforts in the future. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Okay, and we have a new guest for the last topic on the minimum wage. Their name is Sheepdog TV. I've been made aware that even before I was on Twitch, they were making the rounds on the panel game. My good co-host Danabo made me aware. Welcome to the show.
What's up, guys? Going.
Ooh.
Hey, what's up, Sheepdog?
Nice to meet you.
How you been, brother?
Nice to meet you.
I'm living.
Would you like
Beautiful background.
Would you like to do
Thank
a
you,
quick
thank
introduction?
I'm just your average blue collar dude, center right, left on some things. Pretty reasonable. Not married to any ideas. Just a content creator, man. I'm a blue collar worker, a free man, in a free nation, and I love this country.
Wonderful.
Right
so
on.
We're going to go on to the last topic, which is the minimum wage. Biden has, of course, proposed that we should be raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour as part of the stimulus. This, of course, has brought back a lot of debates about what will happen to small businesses, what will happen to workers' wages, what will happen to the economy generally. So, as always, we'll start in the top left-hand corner. Then after that, we'll go into an open discussion. And this is the last topic of the show. So, Hutch, you may take us off. And remember, everybody, during opening statements, no interruptions. You will be able to debate this after that. So, Hutch, you may begin.
Yeah, so clearly there are a lot of issues that are plaguing this country right now that require attention and legislation. But I think probably the most significant one in my mind has been income inequality and how that's grown nothing but worse and worse for probably like the last 5 or 6 decades right now. And if we go back to the original intent of the minimum wage in 1938, it was to increase the buying power of low-income earners in this country. That was the entire reason. And I think the arguments for and against a $15 an hour minimum wage are sort of divided amongst people who either believe that anybody that's working in this country, full-time job, 40 hours a week, should they be afforded the dignity of being able to support themselves or a family? And then there are a lot of people in this country that believe that people that sort of flip burgers for a living shouldn't be allowed to make as much, make enough money to support themselves. That wasn't always the case in this country. You used to be able to support like a family of 3 or 4 just on a single income earner working a minimum wage. Sorry, I'm stumbling a little bit. I've been streaming for about 11 hours and I'm getting a little tired. But this is the one topic that I probably feel the most strongly on out of all the topics that we've picked. And I'll save the rest of what I have to say for the discussion part. I'm eager to hear what you guys have to say.
Wonderful. Next, we're going to throw it over to No Comment Check.
Yeah, I mean, the minimum wage is, part of the package, that we got so many years ago, part of the, part of the whole, part of the breadcrumbs, honestly, that we've been thrown in order to keep capitalism acceptable. That being said, when people are going hungry, breadcrumbs are fucking useful. So, we'll take what we can get. It's a little late and it's a little small and it hasn't kept up with the productivity. So if in this country, there's 2 graphs. There's productivity, and that's the rate of the essentially what the average worker does, the value that the average worker contributes to their employer, right? That graph goes up and up and up and up. There's also income, and that graph, these graphs went up together. They were like together. At some point in the 70s, income flattened out, productivity kept going up. That slice in between there, that's what they've been stealing from you, okay? At the very least, you can recognize that is stolen wealth from the American people. Yeah, I'm glad that they're doing it. It's a little late, it's a little small, but I'll fucking take it. And with that, I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Okay, next is going to be CTV.
I don't think the federal minimum wage needs to be changed. I think that if you're taking a real good look at the economies across the nation, if you're not setting a federal minimum wage based off of the very poorest community, you're going to end up, and then you try to attempt an average between all of them in some kind of meaningful way, or I'm assuming it would try to be, right? You're going to end up making it harder for other communities that don't have the business infrastructure there to be able to pay a higher wage, and you're going to reduce the amount of businesses that they can actually do business, right? So I feel like that this is one of those issues where California is an example that where they actually have local minimum wages for county municipalities and cities, and they have their own minimum wages based off of what their local economy is. And I feel like that this issue, much like gun control, would be something that you would want to be handled at the more local level that's closest to the constituents. That way, as times change, people change, those laws can be updated to the way that people are now. But if you try to argue for something at the federal level that is unobtainable for certain states to be able to participate in because they don't have the business infrastructure there to be able to do it, then all you're really going to do is feed corporations. And I know my friends here on the left definitely don't want to be feeding the corporations, right? Because they would be the only ones who would be able to do any kind of business. So it seems like that we should be on the same side when it comes to having these things handled at the local or the state level.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to DemonMama.
Yeah, I think that it is high time for us to have a $15 minimum wage. The minimum wage has been almost laughably low, and Americans are paying the price, especially as the pandemic has appeared, and we realize that actually Americans can't even take time to avoid a horrible, deadly illness. We have a serious problem, not just with a general income inequality in our country, but specifically with the lowest brackets of income being the stickiest in our country. I think that we should be much more willing to actually invest in the poorest members of our society, because the result will be a better economy in general. And the idea that a $15 minimum wage will instantly bankrupt all kinds of companies simply isn't true. In fact, there's and for anyone who doubts it, because it is, of course, somewhat experimental. We've never had a $15 minimum wage before in the past, except we have tried it in some places, like here in Seattle. Here in Seattle, we had a 5-year program by which the $15 minimum wage was worked up to, and the difference between what the original minimum wage was and the $15 minimum wage for workers was subsidized by the state. So the state put aside some money and said, all right, businesses, if you're below a certain level, you don't have to jump to this right now. You can work your way up. And it worked great. and it's been fantastic for the economy. These studies can be all accessed publicly on the University of Washington's website, and you can learn all about it. But as it turns out, it's been a really, really good experiment, and I think we should try it on a larger scale, especially because our economy is in shambles because of COVID and how horribly mishandled it was by the last administration. So I think this is as good of a time as ever, and we should also consider maybe even pushing it higher, because as it turns out, despite all the fear mongering from business people, it actually might be really good for businesses, and they might grow as well.
Gonna throw over to counterpoints.
Yep. So this is where I think the right has lost the plot. I am not interested in living in the 19th century. I am not interested in my children working in a fucking pickling factory, losing their fingers to goddamn unregulated fucking machinery. I'm not interested in working 60 hours a week in order to support my fucking family and have my wife working fucking 40 hours a week. I am not interested in my kids being uneducated fucking Walmartian fucking clerks who have to live under the goddamn glare of fucking halogen lights as they slowly fucking wonder why they're even alive. I am not interested in an economy that just works for itself. I am interested in an economy that works for average human beings. I am a Republican because I care about a republic. I care about a republic because I care about the people within that republic. I care about American families. That means that I want American families to be able to feed their kids. That means I want them to be able to be put through school. That means I want their schools to be high quality. That means that I want them to have access to either vocational training or high quality education. That means that I want them to be able to start businesses, meaning that I don't want the government to be such a fucking burden that it basically destroys all business. But at the same time, if the studies that DemonMama brings up display that small businesses can still operate at a wage in which their employees can support themselves financially, then I see anybody who opposes this as a fucking vampire who has been sucked in by ANCAP fucking propaganda that's been largely fucking propagandized since the 1950s. And I will make one final point and then I'll shut the fuck up for a while. The Make America Great Again movement was based off of boomer mentality, the 1950s and the 1960s. The 1950s and the 1960s economic opportunities were created by redistributive economic programs created in the 40s. So let's make America great again.
Man,
I love FDR too.
You were swearing like a sailor over there. Okay, we're gonna bring it over to Trihex.
Yeah, obviously I support $15 minimum wage here, but I would say we can do better than that actually here. The problem here is that we haven't increased the minimum wage since 2007 under Bush's second term. It's been a long ass time now. We've had to incur tons of inflation and some other bullshit, and ultimately here $15 is not enough on the basis that it needs to be definitely tethered to inflation going forward. That way, there's no more like antiquated another, because we're essentially minimum 10 years overdue for a minimum wage increase federally here. So what needs to happen is you need to address that like rotting decay period. So there needs to be from here going forward, definitely make it to where it's like tethered to inflation going forward permanently on a year by year basis forever. Make that part of the legislation here if we can possibly. But let's go further here, right? So Florida's already passed this. Florida already passed whenever there was a direct democracy initiative to ask Florida, the state of Florida, would they want to have their minimum wage increase. It happened. It passed overwhelmingly. I think it was like something like almost 70%. So they already have it enacted. Seattle already has it here. I believe Colorado also has it as well. It's already active in other places here. The fact that we have a starvation wage where minimum wage right now is so comically low that you can't actually afford to live in any major metropolis city on minimum wage. If you worked full time, you have to get a second job. You have to overextend yourself. You have to extend yourself far past what should be a reasonable amount of time and effort. It's bonkers. It's ridiculous. It's insulting. And as we were alluding to in earlier portions here, yeah, not only that is $15 not enough, not only is it not being tethered to inflation, but also if we consider here that if it was tethered to inflation alone, it would actually be $18. If it was tethered to productivity, it would be upwards of $22. Yeah, there's a whole lot going on here. And then finally here, all the arguments about it crumbling and obliterating small businesses. Well, obviously, how this would be implemented altogether here is you would do it on a slow release basis. Whether you want to call that, $1 per year, or you implement it over the course of 4 years or 5 years, you don't do it immediately, and you can obviously scale back and tether and do individual studies to figure out what is the average cost of living in each state, and then apply a different level of speed individually towards states and have an overall mandate of it all being implemented within the next 4, 5, or 6 years, ultimately. So yeah, I'm enthusiastic for there to be no longer be this like starvation, poverty, wage doesn't actually fucking do anything.
Okay.
I'm done.
I'm gonna throw it over to KOE Nation.
Well, thank you. Now, something in this discussion, whenever there's minimum wage discussions, I always find that quite a few people are putting the cart before the horse, because you're talking about if it was adjusted to inflation, it'd be $22. Actually, no, not even close. I got some numbers here for you, folks. In February 1st of 1968, the minimum wage was $1.60. Now, the thing is, under that time, we were under a bimetal standard. You would have been paid $1.60 in silver coinage. Now, the current spot price for 1 ounce, because $1 was 1 ounce of silver, the current spot price is about $27.40. So $1.60 is adjusted. If you were to actually have the still sound money silver standard today, you would be making roughly $41.10 an hour. That is the amount of purchasing power that has been stolen from you over the last decades, ever since we went off of a sound money standard. So if we're talking about, yes, people are drastically, ridiculously underpaid, but under our current fiat money inflation system, you can make the minimum wage as high as you want. It's any gains that you could possibly perceive are going to be inflated right out from under your feet. So if you want to really benefit the little guy, advocate for a sound money system. You want to really fuck over the big timers and the big elites, advocate for a sound money system. That is actually how you can get to the point where we actually have people working. And yes, actually at the time in 1968, we were earning $40 worth of purchasing power. So yes, the idea that we can't get there, we could, but not without a sound money system. Now, I know it's a little bit of a different thought than most people have usually encountered, but yes, under our silver system, you were making ridiculously better wages. So, yield back.
Okay, now the last intro will be Sheepdog, and then we'll go into open discussion.
Yo, so as a guy that has run businesses, been a supervisor, manufactured places, the current shop that I work at, we pay people that with no skills. They come in as newbies, anywhere from 13 to 14, sometimes $15 an hour, depending on their age and maturity. I live in Texas. As a welder fabricator, it's all about the trade. I don't know about other states, but you go to a fast food restaurant, of course, you're not going to make a whole lot of money. But I live in an oil state where you have a choice. You don't have to flip burgers. I realize some people can't drive to a manufacturer. Maybe they ride a bike to work. Maybe they walk. I don't know what everybody's public transport is like. But what I could tell you is I've run crews, and some of these crews at different shops that I run, if $15 minimum wage were to hit, I'd have to lay off half my crew. Supervisors are given a salary cap. So when we hire a crew, we try to leave a little bit of room so that we can give people raises after their 90-day reviews. So if I have a salary cap of 200, let's say I have a salary cap of $1 million for my crew. I'm not going to budge past 900,000 within my crew. That way I have room to give people raises. But in some of these smaller shops that I worked at, if they were to make the minimum wage $15 an hour, I have to lay off half my fucking crew because there goes my salary cap. Another problem with a $15 minimum wage, not saying that it's not a great idea. I do want American people to be able to pay their bills, take care of their children. That's all great and dandy. I get it. But at the end of the day, this little burger joint in my town employs 5 people, 6 people top on their crew. It's a really small little burger shack. If they have to pay all their employees $15 an hour, and this isn't a place that makes a whole lot of money. This is a retired guy just trying to keep his lights on. Okay. Really tiny shack with like 6 tables. If he has to pay his employees $15 an hour, not only will he probably go out of business, but your little $10 burger and fries and a drink is now a $25 burger, fries, and a drink. So at the end of the day, you're like, hey, yeah, we're making $15 an hour, but now you're going to pay more for everything. You know what I'm saying? It's never, ever going to just hit the corporation and be at the cost of the corporation. Anytime a business or a corporation takes a financial hit per se, like $15 minimum wage, the employees are the ones that are going to suffer. A lot of them are going to get laid off. And also, whatever your service is, you got to increase the cost of it. Maybe your service is manufacturing insulin. Maybe your business is making a life-saving drug. And the customers are the ones that take a hit. So the customer that just got $15 an hour now has to pay twice the amount for their medication. And that goes for every industry across the board. And that's not to even talk about really small business like these lawn services in Texas that employ like 5 fucking people. 5 people. They charge $50 to mow a lawn and they got 5 people doing it. They have a certain amount of time they got to bang it out. Now you have to fire half your fucking guys because you can't afford to pay them. There's no profit margin. So if they're going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, there's a whole bunch of other things they have to do as well. You can't just say all businesses $15 an hour. You can't do that. There's a whole bunch of other things that have to happen that make this extremely fucking complicated. It's not just as simple as raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Your little $3 gallon of milk is going to turn into a $7 gallon of milk. Maybe my math is wrong there, but prices of everything go up if you got to pay your employees more.
Okay, let's get into the open discussion.
All right. Yeah. Basically, everything Sheepdog TV said was just not correct at all. The idea that if you raise the minimum wage to $15, that you're going to have $20 per burger is the most ridiculous, exaggeration I can possibly imagine. That doesn't even make sense on a mathematical level. You'd sell thousands of burgers at $20 all of a sudden, jumping up from $6.
Well,
that's stupid. Come on. That's no, dude, come on. That's so dishonest. It's ridiculous.
This isn't like a corporation fast food restaurant. It's not this is a small mom and pop business that literally might do on a good day $1,000.
You're literally proposing this is like magical thinking. This is fantasy. You're saying an imagined burger shop might also raise. It's ridiculous.
It's a real burger joint.
There's no data for this. All of the studies show that actually it's really good for the economy. In fact, because here's the thing, as it is right now,
studies from where? Where's your sources?
Yeah, I already told you them. You can go look them all up on the University of Washington.
Okay.
My state and my city, Seattle, has done a widespread experiment on this, and it's extremely well documented.
5
now hold on. Now it's my turn to talk.
Hour.
Listen, you got to go on your rambling, incoherent rant, and now it's my turn to respond. Okay.
Okay.
Now
you have the floor.
Listen,
baby.
I just get really tired when people lie really confidently, and
I'm not lying.
Yeah, it is.
I'm not lying.
Okay. Give us.
Can I finish my thing?
Give me a moment. Give me a moment. When I hear,
yeah, do your thing. I'm out of it. I'm not even listening to you anymore.
Okay.
He just admits that part now.
Let me clarify a rule for the last time. When I talk, no one else talks. Now it will just be mutes. This is the 3rd time it's happened, so it will just be mutes going forward on that specific role. Now, DemonMama, you can respond, but I just want to make clear to everybody that when 2 people are talking over each other, again, nobody gains anything. Nobody hears your point. So, DemonMama, you can go.
Yes, thank you, Dylan. I agree. I wish people would not talk over me as much. The fact of the matter is that right now, as it stands, with our disgustingly low minimum wage, there are people whose entire income and more, mind you, usually because they have multiple jobs. Tons of Americans have 2 to 3 jobs these days, sometimes gig economy jobs. Their money goes to rent. Their money never goes back into the economy. It just goes to rent, and that goes to the landlords, and that's it. You bump that up to $15 minimum wage, all of a sudden they can afford to buy a burger. Oh, maybe the burger cost goes up from $6 to $6.50. Oh, but wait a minute. More people can actually buy the cheeseburger, which means the business makes a lot more money because those people who are working for $15 an hour can make 1,000 cheeseburgers an hour, all of which are now selling for $6.50. And guess what? People can afford their rent. It goes all over the place. We know this is the case. And the funny thing is that we're like the only country in the world that's even having this debate. Every other like on par nation with a strong economy knows that you have to pay your workers a fair amount or else they can't participate in the economy. What we have in America is a ocean of damn near slave labor that sorry, but mostly the Republicans have kept completely locked in position, and people like yourself using weird magical fantasy thinking just propose like invisible burger shops that might or might not exist as a reason to keep almost all of America in poverty. Do you realize that we couldn't weather even the smallest bit of this pandemic because no one in America has fucking savings? The state of the economy in America, the state of poor people in America is horrible. And all we get is these random anecdotes about a burger shop and the poor guy who won't be able to do business, even though more people would be buying his fucking burgers. Also, if you're running a shop where you can't afford to pay above slave labor, maybe you should restructure your shop, because I think somebody might be skimming some money off the top somewhere.
DemonMama, didn't like the University of Washington do a study on the implementation of the Seattle? I feel like this legislation is getting vastly mischaracterized. It's not just like, raise the minimum wage 5 head. It's like a lot more complicated. It's can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I can. The way that it worked is that if you're a business under a certain level, aka if you're not Amazon, because Amazon is huge in the state, basically, if you're a small business that can't afford to work up to the $15 minimum wage, there's a 5-year sliding scale where it ticks up each year. And in the meantime, the government put aside a fund of money from the massive amount of taxes that we're getting from now, how much business is coming into the state. And then they fill up the difference. So you pay whatever that year's minimum wage is. It ticks up the next year, and the government gives the worker the money in between. And guess what? As it turns out, that buffer made more than enough time for the money to start circulating back into the economy, and these businesses thrived. Not only did they not do worse, they thrived. They did well.
And burgers are not 25 burgers are not $25 fucking in Seattle. They were saying
they're great.
There are a lot of economists that were warning against like massive rates of inflation with the implementation of the $15 an hour minimum wage in places like Portland and Seattle. It didn't fucking happen. You're going to have some loss of jobs, yes, but you're going to lift a lot of people out of poverty. And I'm sort of fine with businesses becoming obsolete if they can't.
I really feel like they did a good job of understanding silver. Right, and we literally just ran over that with regard to inflation.
One moment. DemonMama, I do want to say you're just straight up wrong. Burgers in LA are not great. They're subpar at best. LA burgers.
What the fuck?
Last I checked, LA isn't in Washington. That's California.
It's all the west, all the coast.
Seattle has fucking god tier burgers.
West Coast burgers suck.
California, Washington, all of its garbage. East Coast has best burgers. It's always been the fact. Okay, East Coast and the South, best burgers. Sorry.
Nebraska, say Dick's Fries.
Shake Shack is way better than In-N-Out Burger. Sorry, get over it, people.
If I may, there is one thing that I found kind of interesting. Like, I forget who said it, and there's been some odd pushback on it, but ultimately, all costs will be ultimately passed on to the customer if costs have been increased in any way. I'm sorry, that's just how business works. Like, you can nod your head, no. Yeah, sorry, that's all costs, every one of them will ultimately be passed on to the customer.
I need this so bad.
Okay, Connor.
I want to rebuttal to that. I want to right after.
Tell me why my business doesn't work.
Right after Connor. Right after Connor.
Then we got to go to Try and Phil. Okay.
So I'm actually going to take a more extreme position. I want to abolish the minimum wage entirely, and I want the return of unions. And the reason why I'm saying that is because Sheepdog brought up an anecdote, but I'll address this anecdote, which is basically that, hey, there's a mom and pop shop. They got 5 employees, and they basically think that if they raise their wages, that they're not going to be able to maintain the shop. A unionized workforce could make the decision on, we literally understand the budget. We understand that this is a mom and pop business. This is part of your family's legacy. We want to help with that project. As a result, we will accept ABC wages so we can keep the lights on. And then that business can perpetuate. And then KOE, just to address you directly, Denmark actually has a similar social setup to what I'm talking about, where there isn't a minimum. There is no minimum wage. but the average wages for fast food employees is $22 an hour. The difference in the price of the burger is like $1. Now, maybe they're offsetting costs by their criminal fucking profits in other countries. But at the same time, like we're not getting past the moral question of whether or not average people should be subjected to what amounts to slave labor. And here's the thing. The conservative fucking point on this, which I subscribed to probably 5 years ago, was get good, loser. That's literally it. Bootstrap your fucking way out of society, like bootstrap your way out of a shit. Stop being a piece of shit. But at the same time, you have to understand that we're all fucking brainiacs. We all have 2,000 IQs. We're all fucking, going to be multimillionaires by the end of this podcast. So basically, we're in a privileged position, but there are people who have to fucking pick the food. They have to fucking, shuffle the food for you. They have to fucking prep it for you. They have to drive trucks. So it's a moral question. Should these people work for slave wages and slave hours, never hang out with their children, be so exhausted that they don't fucking get to spend time with their family, send their fucking kids to sub-shitty schools, or should we find a better way to structure the economy? That's a fundamental question that you have.
That's why you should advocate for sound money, my man. And then we'd be right there.
I'll monopolize time. So sorry, but going to a fiat currency, I understand what you're saying with the fucking, basically having a gold standard or the fucking silver standard, all that shit. But at the same time, going to a fiat fucking currency has its advantages. So for instance, in times of crisis or war, you can basically use inflationary and deflationary fucking money in order to fucking manage the economy. It's a completely different subject that we would have to fight about probably for about an hour.
That's why I do advocate for it, because then governments can't fund wars so easily. So, bravo. Yes, fucking A right. I love this guy. Where you been hiding this guy this whole time? I love him.
He's been hiding on lefty panels. That's where he's been hiding.
God, we need to bring him back. We need to bring him back. He's been straying a little too far to the right. Don't worry, man. We'll get your political compass.
No, he's making America great, man. He doesn't want like half the country being fucking poverty.
Next is
what a radical.
Neither do I. I want actually higher minimum wage than anybody's even proposed on this panel just through sound money. I want the average worker to go away with $41.
I feel like somebody's trying to scam me here. I don't know if I trust you. I don't know if I trust your gold shit. This sounds like a scam to me. This sounds like I feel like I'm gonna get ripped off here.
Come on, how can you not trust this face?
To be fair, I feel
wow.
KOE.
What?
To be fair about KOE, he does kind of feel like the guy who could sell an Uzi to the PLA. I mean, he does feel like the type of guy who could like.
True.
I don't know.
Flattery will get you nowhere, sir. My God.
Next is gonna be it was Sheepdog, and then we're gonna go to Try. Okay.
All right.
Wait, was this open discussion?
You said you wanted to comment next. I was just throwing it over.
Man, I forgot what the fuck I was gonna say.
It's okay. Then we'll just throw it over to Try.
Let me hop in then.
Yeah, skip me and come back. Skip me and come back.
Vladic, love it.
Am I up next?
Yeah, do it, bro.
Okay, cool.
All you, bro.
So Sheepdog, yeah, you're concerned about the about if minimum wage went up to $15 an hour or something, or somewhere in that spectrum, and that you'd have like these
I'm not an economist, okay? I'm just a fucking welder.
Oh no, maybe I'm not here to.
I'm a moron.
I'm not here to attack you. I'm here to like help realign. So I feel like the one thing you're focused on there is like a pivot reaction to like wages suddenly going over 200% overnight, when in reality these policy implementations would happen over a time span. For example, let's go over the one that actually already happened. Florida in the 2020 general election had a direct democracy ballot to have the minimum wage increase from whatever the fuck it was now to $15 an hour. And their specification of that is that it would happen over the course of 5 years, $1 per hour. So I believe it was already at $10 an hour. If I'm Floridians, help me out here if I'm correct on that one. So ultimately, they won't even be at $15 an hour on their own state mandated minimum wage until, help me out here, 2025, November 2025.
It was a 5-year implementation.
Yeah, it's going to give them. So it'll be it'll be 11, and it'll be 12, etc. Here. So that time delay, that staggered release of wage increases will allow all those things that you're fearing with the insane like reactionary price hikes on everything proportional to the wage increase suddenly not going to happen. And even then, again, if the federal minimum wage, you look at how it was implemented under Bush administration, we went from 515 to 550 to whatever 685 to then 725. Those were 3 staggered releases of minimum wage increase over the course of 3 years. So ultimately, yeah, what you would do is you would allow a delayed basis to give everyone time to catch up and appropriately adjust. That wouldn't be like this, this big old pivot instead. So I would more relinquish the worry of like how things will be priced around it, and rather fixate on what is the minimum needed spending power to be as being a full-time working class American in this country at $4 an hour. What is the minimum any American at this point should be making at 40 hours a week? Should Americans have to get multiple jobs working? In some cases, if you're doing a full-time 40 and then an additional gig economy of Uber, should you be working 85 hours a week and still have nothing saved and throwing it all to your landlord? Is that really the American way? That's something I would want you to evaluate and talk about.
Sometimes I work 65, 75, and on extreme measures, 80 hours a week, but it's not necessarily because I'm chasing a dollar bill. It's because I'm loyal to the people I work to and we got work to get done. But I think, like, back to what CTV said, man, I think it should be at a local level. And I like the idea of like slowly doing it. Like, I agree with some of the stuff DemonMama said. It makes sense to slowly do it over a few year span to give the businesses time to catch up and adjust and to financially get ready. And that goes back to what I said, saying like there's a whole bunch of other things that need to happen if you're going to make it 15 an hour. You know what I'm saying?
But wait, if you're loyal, but I have to ask now though. So if you're loyal, it's like what you're being paid here is like really relevant.
What if you're in like a small hoduck town with just a few businesses within like 50 miles? Are we going to like make these businesses straight up disappear off the economic field because they can't afford to pay people $15 an hour? Like, let's talk about some small towns in Louisiana where there's like one store within like 75 square miles.
Yeah, and that one store is Walmart because they wiped out all the other in the first place here.
No, you never drove across the country where you drive like 100 miles and there's no stores? I have.
So you're asking me for the viability of a small business.
I don't usually comment, but I believe there was recently a congressional report on the issue. Am I right about this?
Yeah.
That was
CBO,
basically.
And I like.
Give me a moment here. The
I'm
CBO
sorry,
basically ended up saying that a lot of workers would get wage increases because of this. There would also be, I believe it was 0.9 million jobs lost, which rounds to 900,000 jobs. This was the conclusion from the CBO. Of course, you could disagree with the CBO, but I just wanted to throw that out there for debate since that's a congressional budget thing.
Can I comment on
that? Sure. Yeah.
Yes, because I can give you a little bit of there's a little bit more context to that. That number also included unwanted jobs, aka people who would quit their job because they no longer need to work 2 jobs, which was discussed pretty extensively in numerous analysis of the CBO report. I always forget the acronym. But yeah, a lot of that job loss is in unwanted jobs, aka people no longer having to work Uber jobs, people quitting their McDonald's night shift because they no longer need to work that anymore. And that's actually weatherable.
And I want to piggyback off of this too. So for instance, like some of the projections that Republicans were using, because Republicans are the country club fucking party. I hate fucking saying it, but it is. So some of the projections that they were using, Ted Cruz fucking tweeted, "Oh, well, we're going to lose fucking, 2 million or like fucking 20 million fucking jobs or whatever." What he failed to include in that is that was a decades long projection off of projected growth. So these jobs don't even fucking exist. These are just jobs that would have been created by these surplus fucking profits that these companies pocketed rather than paying to their employees, that they would then reinvest in order to creating more shitty jobs. So like here's my fucking thing. It's a moral calculation. Automation is on the way. Fusion technology is probably on the way. Nuclear is already a thing, nuclear power. Renewable is on the way. Basically, all of these things are going to start a cascade. We are effectively in a new industrial age. So between like 1870 and 1920 inside the United States of America, 90% in 1870, 90% of people were working inside of agriculture, and by 1920, 10% of people were working in agriculture. We're effectively looking at a similarly culturally cataclysmic event with the advent of the information age. Now, it doesn't have to be a permanent cataclysm. What can happen is we can say, what do we do with automation? What do we do with fusion technology? What do we do with nuclear? What do we do with all this kind of stuff? And if the answer is, if you can't find a good job, just be a fucking slave or a gangster, that's not the fucking society that I want to create. That's not the society that I'm fucking interested in. I would like to see some redistributive economics to make sure that American families are actually happy and healthy. And one more point before I shut up. I have a child. I am only going to have a second child because I can't afford a third. Plenty of people are making this calculation, including plenty of millennials who say, I can't afford a child at all, therefore I'm not going to have one. You are effectively ending bloodlines because of slave wages. I am not interested in that society.
Are you sure you're center right, bud?
I can fight. I can scream with fucking DemonMama for like 40 minutes straight. I think she can attest to that. So
True.
I'm gonna stay center right because I can fight everybody all the time.
I mean,
Like,
I
basic-
do.
now,
basic
if I
fuck center
may-
right.
Yes,
I just want to
Phil.
be a gangster in Connor's world.
What's that?
Who's that?
Phil,
I just
Phil
wanna
is
be
listed
gangster.
next.
Oh, thank you. Now, I will just say it's a kind of a joke that we have here in Nebraska. Waiting till you got enough money to have kids is just a good way to not have kids. God, I don't think I've met a single person that was like, oh, God, we've got all the money lined up. It's good to go. Let's have a kid. It always seems to be kind of a financial surprise. At least it is around here. But now you did touch on something about fusion power. I am a huge nerd on that kind of stuff. The minute we hit fusion power, our species is taking off. We can start actually colonizing the solar system. We can start looking into, it's going to be the biggest revolution of our species. And it's why, like, renewables are nice, but once we hit fusion power, you almost don't need it. Like, it's a nice to have, not a need to have. So I am very much looking forward to that day. And God, I hope I live to see it. But in regards to, you also touched on automation. That is something that is coming down the pike, folks. Trust me, a lot of folks in my industry are turning to automation. The higher the wages hike and the higher the costs, because one of the most dangerous things you can do in this country is hire someone, because it opens you and exposes you to all levels of lawsuits. So you have all kinds of legal horseshit that can fall on your head just from hiring somebody. So the more costly and the more onerous that gets, the more businesses are going to invest in automation. It's just going to happen. And with that, I yield back to you, beautiful people.
Okay, next is gonna be DemonMama. And DemonMama, when I like raise my notebook, it's like that signifies that I like wrote your name down. You don't need to like take the Pledge of Allegiance every time. Like you need to.
I just did.
Good student in class. Just kept the hand on. Good student in class.
Yeah, I mean, it's a comfortable position for me.
Okay.
So I don't. Yeah. So yes, we have had many disagreements, Connor, but on this particular one, we are in full agreement. I think we talked about this on another panel, relatively recently. In fact, I think that it's a almost inexpressible shame that we fear technological advancement in America. In fact, there's fear-mongering articles about automation all the time. Why should we be afraid of automation? And what's worse is, why are we all so afraid of a number of technologies that threaten to bankrupt our economy because it will put everybody out of work? What kind of upside down system do we have? That is absurd. And it is the mentality of being afraid of $15 minimum wages. It is the mentality of being afraid of stimulus packages. It is the mentality that says that we need to be afraid of taking, common sense precautions against a plague. That leads us to being scared of technology. And also, it's the fact that we have a grossly underprepared legal and copyright and patent systems that make it so that we have to completely fear the newest technologies that are coming, technologies that could advance humanity to the next era. It's sad.
Yeah, can I jump on board that? I mean, I don't want to Bigfoot anybody, but like, can I jump on board that point? Yeah, like this is what I always talk about. Like technology and automation can either be our best friend or our worst enemy. It's either going to make it heaven or hell. It's going to be heaven if we control that automation, if we control that technology, if what it does is frees us up to do more things with our minds and to create more, because that's what we want to do as human beings. We don't like to do menial jobs. We like to create, right? It's going to be terrible though if we get there and the accumulated power on the side of capital is so much greater than anyone else's. That's the situation we're in right now, and that is the danger. We don't own the automation. We don't own the technology. We don't own the means of production. And I'm going to say it right now. As long as we don't, that's a danger. And we're thrusting ourselves into a potential hell that could be a heaven if we just take control of our own destiny. How about that, Shot?
Okay, Connor. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
right now there's not a lot of people raising their hand. You can just go into it. You don't need to raise
Yeah,
your hand.
yeah. So, and this is why I won't claim the label of like left at all, because basically, like, I am skeptical of socialism. I am skeptical of communism. I am skeptical of all like it being a panacea to solve all of society's ills. I'm a mixed economy capitalist, and while I'm okay with like redistributive economics, a reasonable living wage, building American families, the fact that this is like saying that I don't want Americans, working class Americans, to work exclusively for slave wages, the fact that that's a partisan issue is actually fucking depressing to me. And one of my favorite fucking political heroes is Theodore fucking Roosevelt, who, need I fucking remind people, he had a few like he had a few racist edgy things, but he was also an environmentalist. He was somebody who cared about the environment. He was somebody who cared about the national park system. He was somebody who cared about his fucking country, and he advocated for the people inside his country. So being a Republican can mean that you care about a republic. It can mean that you're fiscally conservative in some constraints. But the reason why I'm fiscally conservative isn't because I want to use it as a fucking cudgel to beat up fucking poor people. The reason why I'm fiscally conservative is because I want to make sure that I invest in the human beings inside my country, enable them to we talk about equality of opportunity on the right. I want to create real equality of opportunity, real quality education, real economic opportunities that then allow people to have healthy, happy, productive lives. So Sheepdog, you brought up the fact that you're just through not the kindness of your heart, but through loyalty to your company, you will work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. I find that incredibly noble. I find it admirable. I am not a hater of the Protestant work ethic or the Christian work ethic. However, what I would cite to you as a fellow boomer,
Protestant Christian work ethic, man. I just do it because got to get work done, right?
Okay, well
if we don't get the job done, people don't get paid, payroll doesn't get made, lights turn off at the shop.
So I admire your work ethic regardless of where it originates. Okay, but my point to you as a fellow boomer is that if you have children or if you have family, you are not getting that time back. And that is why I advocate for a fucking work-life balance, because I want to see my kid grow up. I want to spend time with him on weekends, and I want every fucking American to have the same thing.
Also, to continue off of that, I noticed that the KOE brought up the idea of us like colonizing space, which I would love if we could expand our reach into the stars, but it doesn't really look like we have figured out enough social problems to be able to do that. Right now, we have like people like Elon Musk going online and talking about how he wants to do a contract indentured servant program for his Mars colonies. That's nightmarish. And that is like people go on Reddit will just like clap like seals for that. And it's just like, what is the state of the understanding of the value of human life, the understanding of human labor in our country is just pathetic. It's because I don't know, we've become so owned by massive wealth hoarding that we don't even have a value of labor anymore, that people can go and work 8-hour weeks and get nothing for it, that they have to do that just to scrape by and then maybe scooch into their home at night and catch one episode of The Mandalorian or something like that before they have to get up and do it all over again. It's like we really need to rethink the way that we approach the value of labor and the value of humans. Like, what happened? What happened to the world that we started to just think of humans as like human capital stock, as the Republicans who go on international news will say? It's terrifying, honestly. And I really wish that for all of the people out there listening now, take a look and think about the fact that our country is currently a lattice work of fiefdoms of tiny feudalistic authoritarian businesses that offer nothing back to their employees and exploit them to the maximum degree. We have to think harder, and I think that the $15 minimum wage is the first part of this. And interestingly, though I don't oppose a $15 minimum wage, I actually really like the idea that Connor pitched earlier, which is let's get some union power back in this fucking country.
Oh boy! Now I do have to say in response to that, if you don't like Elon Musk's perspective and how he's going about colonizing Mars, then I do encourage other people.
Your mic started going robotic.
Can you hear me?
Now
Clear
you're
as
good.
a summer day now.
Now you're good.
Good, like a spring breeze. So I will say, if you don't like the perspective that Elon Musk or some like him are taking, then folks, you need to start to band together, start looking into some movements of start colonizing space your own self, start making plans to get there. Because if you don't, people with the drive of Elon Musk are going to be the people that pretty much colonize our entire galaxy. So that's what people that have the drive to do that are going to get there. So
yeah, can I just hop in on that real quick? Because
is this some low rent Nietzsche being sold to us here? I don't know what I'm hearing.
Give me a moment. Okay, so Phil, your mic.
Beat him, go for
give
it.
Give me a moment. I said again. We talked a while. Talk. Okay, so Phil, your mic keeps going robotic, and nobody can really hear what you're saying. So if you could just fiddle a little bit with it and see if you could make some progress on that, appreciate it. Okay, so does anybody want to just grab it?
I'd like to take a look at that. I mean, this is such a this is a real big Chungus moment here. Like the fact of the matter is that Elon Musk is the heir to an emerald mine fortune. Like, this is so silly. What I don't know. This is such a dated way of looking at the world. Like, the idea that like Elon Musk is some kind of like ingenious driven inventor. The dude bought every single so-called invention that he's done, including Tesla, by the way. Bought it. He didn't invent shit. This guy has not invented anything, like, ever. He just has a fuckload of money because of he had a lot to begin with. Literally came to America with a fucking emerald in his pocket kind of bullshit. So this guy started with money and he still has money. And that's how most of America goes. America does not reward people for hard work. I've worked hard my entire goddamn life. You know, I spent the last decade working fucking slave hours for slave wages. And guess what? Not the richer for it. That's just the way that it goes. America doesn't reward hard work right now. America rewards people who already have money. And we should change that. We shouldn't have it possible for people to be sitting on enough wealth that they counter that of the wealth of small nations. That's a ridiculous waste. There are people starving. There are people dying. There are people without homes. And there are luxury empty apartments across the street that are protected by a police force that will crack your skull if you don't want to die. That's ridiculous.
Can we still say cuck?
Those rich people are trying to get to space, though. Can you hear me, though? Can everybody hear me a little bit better?
Yeah,
I can hear you.
I'm gonna legit
Excellent.
send you
Those
one of
rich
these
people are
microphones.
trying to get
Spring breeze.
Better or not, thank you, sir. Thank you. Better or for worse, those are the people that are trying to get us into outer space. And I say God bless them for it. If they get us to the point where we're an interplanetary species a little faster, however they do it, I don't really care.
You are going to be a slave. You're going to be in a human zoo on Mars.
I have not yielded. If we can get to be an interplanetary species, then we cannot go extinct. We effectively can no longer go extinct as a species if we become interplanetary. So I don't care how we
yielded to DemonMama, but it sounds like you yielded to Elon Musk and he's your daddy or something. What the fuck? You want to be under stuff?
Let him, if he can get there.
I'm so sorry. Listen,
Hey, KOE Nation. KOE Nation, man, send me your address on Discord so I can send you one of these microphones, bro.
Oh my God, yeah, I'm sorry. I have a higher standard for the future of humanity than one dude who can spout like Elon Musk, epic Reddit bacon, Keanu Reeves memes on Twitter gets to have an army of slaves in a human zoo on Mars, and you're like, I'm gonna clap that guy on the back. Nah, you know what? I think we got some better ideas. Let's tax the hell out of that bastard and let's all go to the stars. Because guess what? He can come with us too. He just can't have an army of slaves mining Mars crystals so that he can live in a giant crystal palace while everyone else dies and gets mutations. Like, I don't know. When did America when did America become a country of a bunch of when did America become a country of such cowed people? When did America become a country of people who of cucks? When did America bend over and just say, "Oh, Elon, please put me in your slave mine. I would love to go on your slave ship and work as an indentured servant until I die, crushed by a fucking red rock on Mars." Oh my God, it's ridiculous.
Man, everybody's mic is
Can I hop in now? Can I hop in now?
hard. Yeah,
Why is she so angry all the time?
I want to go in further here because, like,
well, that's literally her shtick, sheepdog. She's just literally mad all the time. That's part of the demon part, right?
Hey, eat a fucking edible.
Have you considered maybe? Wait, hold on a second.
I think you have too many edibles, CTV.
Excuse me. Have you considered that maybe? I'm all right. Have you considered the fact that maybe I'm tired of watching the people I care about suffer? Have you considered that maybe I'm tired of knowing every single trans person that I know to be forced into the worst jobs imaginable or no jobs at all? Have you considered that maybe almost every person I know has lost their job throughout this pandemic and is hurting because of that? Maybe there's a fucking reason why I'm angry. The reason that I'm angry is because 460,000 Americans are dead, and we can't even get it together to raise the minimum wage. Shut the fuck up, please.
Do you think you're special?
This isn't. Look.
Well, you can be angry. Okay, I've been quiet.
Every time I've talked, I get talked.
Okay.
Hey, you could be angry, right?
Okay, we've muted this discussion because this is not productive, not helping anybody. So it's completely shut down.
Can I jump in for a second?
And I was trying to hand it over to Trihex before, so it's gonna be handed over to Trihex. Then we're gonna wrap it up because it's at the 11:30 mark anyway. Okay.
Awesome. I was gonna actually piggyback off of DemonMama's point about how fucked we are as like disposable human capital / cattle, because we can go back here to anecdotal here, or not anecdotal, just like actually past history here. April, once the 15-day stop the spread from Mike Pence and all the other bullshit we heard in the March 13 keynote about the initial state of emergency declaration for the coronavirus happened. Once we didn't get anything under control by 15 days stop the spread and all that happened. And then all the shitheads pivoted the point now to, okay, well, you know what? You got to go out there and keep our economy going because everything's going to fall apart now. So you have to be a patriot and go out and get the virus, and fuck it. If you're old, go shopping and go out and go indoor dining anyway. And if you die, cool, you died a patriot. Yes, the normalization of the catalyzation of American consumerism has been a thing for a hot fucking minute now. And it's completely demoralizing and depressing in that it's so ingrained in our fucking culture that people will happily go simp for Elon Musk to go fucking die on an experimental mission to Mars while he continues to make insane, obscene amounts of wealth they can't even spend all in his fucking lifetime. Yeah, it's fucking terrible and depressing. That's one to piggyback off of her point is all. I'm
okay. We are at the 11:30 mark, and I did not ask for anybody to be here past 11:30, so I'm not going to hold people for 4 hours of debate. That'd be ridiculous. So we're going to do wrap up. We're going to start in the top left-hand corner as always with Hutch. You can do your outro, and you can shout yourself out.
Yeah, so as much as I want to talk about Elon Musk and Mars colonies, I just want to, we haven't touched on it yet during this discussion. I just want to throw a pitch out there that people that flip burgers, that is honorable work. I worked in the food industry for years, in my teens and in my 20s, for the most part alongside Spanish-speaking immigrants. I've never seen work ethic like that in my life. I can't think of, there's not too many other honorable or more honorable positions than feeding people. And I think that no matter what you do in this country, and I'm sure this is something that probably most of us agree on this panel, no matter what you do, if you work a 40-hour work week, and we can debate whether that should be 30 or 35 or 40 hours, you should be given the dignity of being able to support yourself, and ideally even maybe a wife and a kid or a husband and a kid or something like that at the same time. But when we talk about, unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people in this country that part of the way that they measure their own value is by how many people are quote unquote beneath them. And so they speak disparagingly of people that work in industries like the food industry as a means to sort of prop their own ego up. And I think it's pretty reprehensible. I've never ever in my life worked alongside people that were as hardworking as I did in the food industry. I just want to say we need to stop this fucking burger flipping language when we talk about these issues, because I think it's kind of disparaging, dehumanizing, And, you're one tragedy away from taking a job like that. And you never know. So anyways, thank you for having me on the panel. Twitch.tv/Hutch, Twitter.com/Hutchinson. I'm very tired tonight. I didn't speak very much, but I enjoyed the spirited conversation between you guys. That was very entertaining. So thank you.
Wonderful. I'm going to throw it over to No Comment Chat next.
Yeah, it's it's been a really fun night. I've loved talking to CBT here and getting to know the rest of the panel too. I would say that I do take exception, to some of our FDR fans here, and I'm not trying to at you too strongly here because I get it. I voted for Biden. I chose harm reduction. I was riding with Biden for this thing, but long term, we got to get behind a different plan because as strong as FDR's medicine was in the New Deal, time proved it not to be strong enough. Every time we get like little crumbs, they recuperate these crumbs from us and it gets taken back and we ended up in another Gilded Age like this. And all the time they're gaining power and power and power. If we get to this point where, the singularity hits and the automation is just like overtaking everything and we're utterly useless to the capitalist class and they've got all the power, we are fucked. It's time that we start getting our eyes on the prize and taking the power back. Now that the election is won, let's concentrate on pushing these goddamn Democrats to the left. I almost said right.
I'm going to throw it over to DemonMama.
Yeah, we can do better than this. We can do better than begging and simpering for people like Elon Musk and retreading long debunked things about a minimum wage. We can do better than this, and we really should. Thank you so much for having me on. My name is DemonMama. You can find me on youtube.com/c/DemonMama. You should come follow and subscribe to me. I promise you'll enjoy my content. After this, I'll be doing a Q&A and open for debate. So if any of you have a huge problem with what I said, come on over. I'd love to fight you. Anyway, shoot me a follow, and thanks for having me on, Dylan.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to KOE Nation.
Thank you so much, Dylan Burns. This has been a marvelous time, and as I'm known to say around here, all that being said, this has been quite the evening. You can find me, Phil KOE, over at KOE Nation on YouTube. I also make appearances on the Dog and Chicken Show, the Tomfoolery Show, and Dads Worldwide. But before I let you go, there's something I want to touch on, folks. It's a little more personal, and since I have the platform, and I asked Dylan if this was okay, I sent him a link to a GoFundMe. Earlier this week and a little bit in the last week, I found out that my 8-year-old nephew has been diagnosed with cancer. He has a very long fight ahead of him. He's going to be going through chemotherapy and radiation, and I would really appreciate, even if it's just thoughts and prayers, any kind of support you could send. But I also sent Dylan the link to the GoFundMe. If you'd be so kind as to distribute that to the people, sir, I will forever be in your debts. And with all that being said, I yield back the balance of my time to the rest of you beautiful people.
Okay, I'm going to throw it now over to Trihex.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the link there. Thank you for sharing that. I'll definitely check it out and contribute when I get a chance. Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, Dill. It's been fun. It's been chill. Particular to this topic here, yeah, obviously I'm a fan of not having a poverty and rich nation. I'm the fan of like being able to have a majority of working class Americans feel respected, not be insulted with the stagnant starvation wages that are not sustainable. Majority of the major cities in this country, if not all of them entirely here. I don't know. I feel like I've kind of gone over all my shit here pretty hardcore. If y'all want to come check me out, though, obviously I will do some kind of like after party Q&A. Well, I'll elaborate on my positions a lot more. If you guys want to challenge me further on that. Thanks for having me. The face of Try Hard. So you can catch me on twitch.tv/Trihex. And I'll see y'all after this there if you guys want to see me.
Okay, and can I ask you a question, Trihex?
Yeah, what's up?
Do you think the rest of Twitch, gaming Twitch, just chatting Twitch should engage more with political Twitch?
That's a good question, actually. The situation there is most people, in my opinion, tune out on politics because they don't feel it really relates to them. Like they don't understand, legislation or Congress or the executive branch. They don't really understand like what's going on. It doesn't make sense to them. They don't feel represented, so they kind of usually tune out. So you have to do a really good effort of like looping them into politics if you want to get them into debate rhetoric, making them feel like they actually fucking matter. So usually what I would do here comparatively, Dylan, is I always bring it back to internet. everyone who's a gamer or even a Twitcher knows it. Their internet sucks because they have some kind of shit ass monopoly ISP who's just fucking them over endlessly. So if you loop them in with like, here's how politics can finally stop this behemoth of if you wanted like good fiber optic internet in your area, and you don't want to have like one shitty provider overcharging you and underserving you on comically pathetic speeds here. Here's how you get them involved. So you got to like make it relatable. I would say that most people would be open to that if you start with that framing in mind and understanding that they don't feel represented in politics. That's why they don't get into it, or they tune it out whenever you get all political on them or whatever. Even though everything's intrinsically political. Kind of like not really a direct answer for you, but they can engage if you make it engaging. Is my direct answer, I suppose.
It can be done.
Okay.
It can be done.
Next is going to be over to Sheepdog.
Hey. All right. So, for everybody that assumed I was a Republican, I'm not a Republican. And I don't need any clout, so I'm not going to shout myself out. I'm not married to any of my ideas. And this panel tonight has I learned a little bit from DemonMama and the Connor over here. I want to use this moment to pass some sincere love. This is not a joke. I'm not being a fucking asshole. Over to DemonMama. You shouldn't be so angry all the time. Be happy, right? And on these panels, be nice to the people that you're trying to convince of your ideas. You convinced me a little bit, right? A little bit. You're a little bit mean and harsh to me and stuff. Okay, you hurt my feelings a little bit. But these panels, right? These are an exchange of ideas. Some of us are extremely different from one another. But if we're going to make real change in this country, we got to be kind to each other and embrace each other and be good. I love you, DemonMama. I'm going to be nice to you, even though you were mean to me. And
listen,
hey, I was going to send a microphone to KOE Nation, but if you need a new microphone, I'll send you one of these.
I don't think I need
Just to
one,
be sweet to you.
but thank you. And
Just to make you happy. Just to make you have one good day. If I could send you a mic and you have one good day.
I promise I have many good days. But I will say, I think the kindest thing that you can ever do for someone is to set them on the correct path to a happier future. And yeah.
I'm happy. I drink lots of beer and eat edibles.
I want you to be able to drink even more beer.
85 hours a week and
minimum
still
wage.
go fishing with my son.
We're going to throw it now over to Connor Points.
So, man, so I loved it. Sorry. My name's Connor. I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints. The best way to find me is literally go onto YouTube, type in Counterpoints, and basically scroll past Contra and 2 or 3 videos, and I'm right there. Also, you can find me on Twitter at ConnorPoints, CONORPOINTS, CONORPOINTS. In reference to this subject specifically, what I want to do is there are many things that I care about on the right that the left would openly reject me for. I am an apologist for American international power. I'm an apologist for American imperialism. I'm a mixed economy capitalist. I'm extremely pro-gun. I love conservatives, even social conservatives who I have vehement disagreements with. I think that even if they have shitty takes that are infuriating to lefties and progressives, most of the conservatives I know are fundamentally good people who are trying to do the right thing. They're often just very religious, and as a result of their religion, they're taking some hot takes that I think make other people feel like shit. I know that they're not going to change their religious takes, but I do know that there's probably a way to communicate them to slow them down a little bit. So I'm a little bit of an enlightened centrist, a little bit center-right, but I care. I care about Americans. I care about people in general. I want everybody to do well. I want the world to be better when I'm gone. And that's part of what I try to do. However shittily is I'm trying to make sure that by the time I'm fucking dead and gone, the world is a slightly better place. And with that, I had an excellent time. Love you guys. However you want to take that. And I wish you an excellent evening.
Okay, next and last but not least is going to be Critically Thinking Veteran.
I appreciate that, Dylan. And as always, I appreciate the invite to the Hippy Dippy podcast. Honestly, the last few months has been kind of crazy, right? But That being said, tomorrow I'm going to be on the Prime Royale, so make sure you guys come by at 8 p.m. to vote for me, right? As far as the minimum wage is concerned, I didn't hear anybody start to even begin to address what I said in the beginning, where I pointed out the example of California, where you want control of these things at the lowest level possible so that the constituents can be able to have the most control over it instead of it being a governmental body so far and away from the individual, right? Everybody else laid out some really great points as to why you should have one, right? We talked about sound money. We talked about, workers' rights and all these different things. But at the end of the day, you're advocating at the wrong level, right? This shows a gross misunderstanding of civics and the way in which leveling forms of government work, right? So I just encourage you to keep trying to get things involved at your local, your state levels for things that you want in your communities, right? Because the reality is that I understand where people are coming on to the internet and they're arguing with people all over the country. So then they feel like that everything has to be argued at the federal level. But in reality, there's a lot of stuff that you should be doing locally to enact the types of goods that you would like to see in your immediate society, right? And if everybody focused more on their local environment, you'd probably be able to impact much more good over the broader scale of the nation, right? Instead of only focusing on hypersensitive things that the news media decides to point out to people, which is where I feel like sometimes I'm not arguing with genuine people. I'm only arguing with news broadcasts that have throughout the day. So with that being said, if you guys feel so inclined, you can find me over at my channel, twitch.tv/critically thinking veteran. You'll find a whole host of very, very interesting and awesome people here in the wolf pack. Dylan Burns himself is a shaman wolf in the wolf pack. And we expect and will have respect in our chat. We draw a pretty hard line when it comes to disrespect in all communities, right? And anybody that wants to come down and have a good conversation about the topics of the day is more than welcome to. And we would love to have you.
And as the shaman wolf of the wolf pack, I would like to call this Hippy Dippy Roundtable to a close.
Dylan, can I shout out one thing before we dip? Everybody else can dip if they need to.
As long as you're telling Dylan to grow a mustache and stop fucking.
Dylan, please grow a mustache. But tomorrow, I'm going to promote one of Dylan's competitors, but I think he's a friend. Prime Kai is basically Prime Kai on Twitch is doing a Royale style battle debate. I'm going to be on there. CTV is going to be on there. So if you're unaware of who Prime Kai is, he is a host. He does political debate stuff. Dylan Burns and him are best friends, and they love promoting each other's channels in order to help each other grow. And that's why he's allowing me to say what I'm saying. So please come join us tomorrow night in order to do that.
Yep. Apparently the winner gets money, which isn't a belt, so whatever. But still, that's cool. Just without a belt. Anyway,
right.
I appreciate you all coming by. You can all leave, and I'm gonna raid. And if you still wanna hang out here and chat, I'll be back in a few seconds. So, see y'all later.